welcome to the SOB 25 team reveal. This is for the blind draft this year in SOB 25. So we'll jump right into it. So opening off, we have SOB 25 threat levels. Last year we had a similar thing. It's the same thing, a little bit different because we changed a category and removed a category. Dynasty is the same, legitimate threat to win multiple Super Bowls. That's the most prestigious of threat levels. Contender is the second most prestigious. A threat to win a Super Bowl every season, but you don't expect that user to win multiple Super Bowls with that team. Playoffs, you're kind of the middle tier. You're a cut above spoiler and underdog. You're a cut below dynasty and contender. You're very much in the middle. You're always expected to be kind of in the mix, in the race for the playoffs, but you're not seen as a true contender to win a Super Bowl for whatever reason, whether it's the team mesh, whether it's you as a user, whether it is the team itself. Spoiler, you're not expected to make many playoff appearances, but you will likely keep most games close and will pull off some impressive upsets. Really, that was taken from inspiration from Jasik. He said something about he likes to play spoiler. That's his favorite role to play in SOB. We had something called Scrappy last year. I felt spoiler just sounded better and it was cooler sounding. Something you could probably more proudly wear than Scrappy. So that's credit to him for that inspiration. We also got rid of something called Fringe, which kind of was, and we kind of melded them together. We melded Fringe and Scrappy together, and that's kind of spoiler. And then Underdog and Unknown, you're expected to lose most of your games, or you're just a completely unknown entity or quantity because, we don't know. You've either never been in here, Black Bunch is returning, so he hasn't been in here in a while, or we just have really small sample sizes of other users. So jumping through and explaining the threat levels a little bit more, broke them up into three categories: roster asset, team fit, and user. Roster assets is kind of grading the roster, the draft picks, the cap space. That's a scale of 1 to 5. Team fit is kind of grading the user strengths with the roster strengths. So if you're picking a team with a good offensive line, great running back, you're a good run user, that's a great fit. User, that's obviously the most important. That's user skill in terms of team building, elevating your team on and off the field, making good moves in the front office, being able to deploy your players in the best way for success. That obviously has the highest range of outcomes because it's 1 to 10. That's the most valuable. That's why I can go up to 10. Team fit and roster assets kind of combine in value to user. All of them cumulatively add up to 20 out of max. So, and then that is kind of how we're determining threat level this year. We have Dynasty, we have Contender, Playoff, Spoiler, Underdog. Those are kind of the scales for it. And as we get into each individual user, there'll be more of an exposition for each specific user. But getting into number 32 and finally the teams. The one user who did not have a choice, it would be SLWJR, the New England Patriots, because of course he was the 32nd user, so he kind of was just left with whatever was left. The Patriots do have Drake May. That's kind of your franchise quarterback. That's the guy you kind of want to focus on offensively. You have Tyquan Thornton as a receiver, kind of could be a good deep threat for you. You have Demario Douglas, who could also be a nice little slot receiver for you. He's kind of young. He's a nice piece. Offensive line isn't much to write home about. Offense in general isn't much to write home about other than Drake May. You have Mike Onwenu, I believe his name is. He's a solid tackle. Defensively, you really just kind of have Christian Gonzalez. That's the main thing main guy you're thinking about building from a defensive standpoint. They have a lot of cap space after the first year. They'll have over $100 million, maybe. I think more than that. I think like $130 million maybe, but I could be wrong. But yeah, that's kind of the roster breakdown. Now, I will preface and say the user and the team fit for users who are new or returning are automatically at 1 because number one, we don't know how good they're going to be because their user they're just coming into the league, and then the team fit. We don't know how they're going to play from a stylistic standpoint, so it's hard to put them in anything above 1. So they're just kind of defaulting at 1. I just want to say that before we get further into this, because I'm sure if a new user talks shit, whoever's going to screenshot this and be like, oh well, you only were rated a 1 user and a 1 team fit. Well, I mean, it's kind of defaulted at that. It's not really how it works.
Now the roster and assets are independent of those, so the Patriots are just that bad. They are a 1 out of 5, um, and that kind of adds up to this cumulative score of 3 out of 20, and it is an underdog, obviously, because anything 6 or under is an underdog. So moving forward, beyond the Patriots here, you have the Denver Broncos. YP, the highly touted user from AB, also a 2-letter name, weirdly. It's a little suspicious there, if you ask me. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, also a 1 out of 5 roster. You have Bo Nix, obviously, offensively. You have, I believe, a good little potential duo in, I think it was the receiver duo that they had. They have something. It's not Cortland Sutton. I believe it is uh, Marvin Mims Jr. and Troy Franklin are the 2 guys I'm going to watch out for from a receiving standpoint. So Bo Nix and those 2 guys are kind of your main offensive pieces you want to build off of. You have Quinn Miernes. That's their best guard. You have 2 veteran bookend tackles in Garrett Bowles and Mike McGlinchey. Defensively, really the only guy I've noticed, Pat Surtain, the best player on this team. Really the only thing that, in my opinion, elevates this team a little bit above the Patriots is Pat Surtain. Going to be a franchise long lockdown corner for you, and that means both of our teams thus far have been AFC teams. So both new users are in the AFC thus far. And moving on a little bit more, we're not going to spend too much time on these new teams and these new users because we can't really break down and analyze, you know, exactly where they're at in terms of how the team melds with them and their style of play. So moving on, obviously you can see Blackabunch is the Titans, as was revealed. Now his playstyle used to be kind of like more of a passing guy, but he's also been a running guy in certain Maddens, so like that, it makes it really hard to grade him anyways. But he always does covet speed. He always does come up with his own unique scheme. So I think regardless, that's something of note. Now the Titans, I think, they don't really fit him very well, so that makes it interesting. This makes it an interesting fit. Now his play style could be very different, so that's why we're not going to get that much into it. But anyways, getting into the actual roster, the meat and potatoes of the Titans roster, you have Malik Willis is probably going to be the quarterback he goes with, although you still have Will Levis, who has a good arm. Not much more of an arm than Malik Willis, though. Malik Willis has all the physical tools. They're the same age. I think that's what he'll go with, probably. In terms of other than that, you have an old receiver trio in DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd. You don't really have any young pieces. The main guy you want to highlight offensively from a weapon standpoint is Okonkwo, the tight end, got star development, fast, I believe almost 90 speed, like 88 or something. He's pretty young. He's still like 23, 24. So, if you're playing Blackabuncher early on in the franchise, key in on Okonkwo. That's the guy who's probably going to get a lot of the targets, is going to be the guy to kind of feed and build into a substantive weapon. Offensive line, you got J.C. Latham and Skoransky that you want to mention. Other than that, it's just kind of a bunch of guys that are there. Defensively, you got Jeffrey Simmons you want to mention. He's going to be a stud, probably, hopefully, a game wrecker for him. At corner, you got L'Jarius Sneed. You have Caleb Farley. Those are kind of the 2 guys to watch for Blackabuncha. They're both, I think, like 95 speed. L'Jarius Sneed should be superstar. I don't think he is, though. He's not. And that's kind of a travesty, but he's still going to be really good, I believe. So will Caleb Farley, I think, for Blackabuncha. So that kind of talks about the main talking points of that roster. And then moving on to 29, who is the Las Vegas Raiders, and another new user, N Frizzy. Now this roster is the first roster we put at a 4 out of 20. The other ones were 1s. Now this one, the 4 out of 20, is primarily because you have a guy like Max Crosby who can dominate defensively. You have a guy like Brock Bowers who's in, talk about Okonkwo. Brock Bowers is the better version of him in every way. He's younger, he's faster, he has a better development. I believe they're the same size, so he doesn't necessarily have size on him, but I think he might be a better blocker already. I'm not 100% sure about that. But yeah, that's something to think about. Obviously, you have Devontae Adams, who's a far better weapon than anyone the Titans have. Better than DeAndre Hopkins, better than Tyler Boyd, better than Calvin Ridley, obviously, in Madden or in real life at this stage in their careers. Excuse me. You also have Christian Wilkins, who got a big contract. Now, the difference between the Raiders, I think, is they probably have, uh, no quarterback really to look forward to, whereas the other three teams kind of have something there. The Raiders kind of just have Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, so that's kind of a little bit of a downgrade, but nothing too detrimental considering they have Bowers, they have Max Crosby, they have Christian Wilkins, they have Devontae Adams. They just have more assets. They also have Michael Mayer, who I think is worth mentioning, the other tight end, a solid player. So I think you kind of, in my opinion, should run a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of two tight end formations with this team. Just because your best two younger weapons are tight ends, so like get them both on the field together, get them out there deployed. Offensive line, you get Colton Miller still, Jackson Power Johnson. Those are kind of your two linemen that you want to construct around. If you're an offensive line guy, which I don't know if this guy is or not, but that's still something to think about. The Raiders are going to have a good amount of cap space moving forward as well, though. So it's a nice little team that you can kind of see why they're a 2 out of 5 in terms of assets. Moving on to 28. Here we have the Carolina Panthers. And then finally the first user who is kind of a returning user, or rather a user that played last year and played a good sample size last year. Now, he still will come in at a 1 out of 10 because he looked pretty much abysmal. Now, he is new to Madden, so that's worth mentioning. So it's not just like him being horrible. He's just new. I also put the Panthers at a 2 in terms of assets, and I put him at a 2 in terms of team fit because from what I saw with the Steelers, Killing likes to pass the ball in relatively high volume compared to his running. Maybe it's just because he couldn't run, though. I don't know. And you have Bryce Young there, who's in his own right has a potentially bright future if developed properly as a quarterback. So, that's worth mentioning. Jonathan Brooks is a good running back, only 21 years old, good rookie. You have Xavier Legette, obviously. You have Jonathan Mingo, who was a great receiver for me last year in Madden. Deontay Johnson is, good if he sees the field. Your Tavion Sanders is definitely worth mentioning, the rookie tight end. You have Ekwonu, the tackle. You have Taylor Moton, the other tackle, is kind of a veteran, and I believe you have one other veteran guard that should hold the fort for you. Hopefully, as you develop Bryce Young and bring him along. J.C. Horn's a good franchise number 1 corner. He doesn't have anything in terms of like abilities, but he has the physical traits. He's still young. He's a good overall. He should be able to develop into a nice corner for him here. And this is, by the way, the first NFC team off the board is the Carolina Panthers. I don't think we have anyone in... Oh, I'm sorry. We do have Frizzy and... who took the Broncos? That would have been YP, sorry. So YP and Frizzy are actually both in the AFC West. So we already have 2 AFC West teams gone. So that's already a division matchup there kind of on the board, is N Frizzy versus... YP twice a year if they both stick around. That's 2 new users, two new relatively highly touted users going head-to-head, 2 rookies. Maybe whoever kind of wins that battle will win the unspoken quote-unquote rookie of the year of SOB that we don't really give out. But, I mean, it's kind of an interesting concept to think about. I think Killing could do pretty well with this Panthers team. Now, it's really more on him to improve as a user and get his Madden fundamentals more well-rounded. We'll see what he can do. I don't think that it's impossible, but for now, that's where he's at. It's a 5 out of 20. I also failed to mention Derek Brown, so that's on me. Derek Brown is probably your best player on defense, either him or J.C. Horn. Derek Brown, I believe, has ability, so he's probably more of a big asset. That was an oversight on my part to not mention Derek Brown. But this team also has pretty good cap space as well. So, yeah, all in all, I think he could improve. And that's all he kind of wants to aim to do probably this year, is just improve from what he was last year. So, not a high bar, but I think he could do it. Moving on to 27, we have the Los Angeles Rams, the second NFC team revealed this would be Eric versus Fiend. He actually did debut as the Rams last year, only played one season with them, and then stepped down. So we'll see if he wants to come back and stick with them this time. Now the Rams roster dips back down to one. The previous two, we had the Panthers and the Raiders. They were both kind of rated as twos. They had a good amount of young assets on their team. The Rams, they don't really have a good amount of young assets. Their best players are Cooper Kupp and Tre'Davious White. They're both pushing 30 or beyond 30. They have Kyron Williams, who's a solid running back, but he's slow. A lot of people don't like that. I don't think Eric versus Fiend will mind necessarily. Excuse me, but that's definitely a factor. Obviously, your best young player is Puka Nacua. I think him in and of itself is not enough to bring it to a 2, but like other than that, you have Kyron Williams, you have Puka Nacua, and what other young assets do you really have? You don't have anybody that's just like a stud player. You have a bunch of pieces, you have a bunch of potential, but you don't have a bunch of like young studs like the Panthers and the Raiders do. You know, with Brock Bowers, with Max Crosby still in his prime with the Raiders. You still have Devontae Adams as an asset, even though he's kind of akin to Cooper Kupp. He's a little bit better in this game. And then, you know, with the Panthers, you have Derek Brown, you have Xavier Legette, you have Bryce Young, you have these young guys in critical spots, whereas the Rams, you kind of just have Puka Nacua, you have a slow Kyron Williams, you have an aging Matthew Stafford, and this is kind of where you sit here is a 3 out of 5. Now, he did only play one season last year with the Rams. It was an abysmal roster, but he only won one game. So the last sample size we have of him is winning one game. That's a 1 out of 10 user, in my opinion, regardless of what the circumstances were, whether he was tanking or not. Doesn't much matter to me, in my opinion. The fit is kind of a 1 out of 5, I say, because, you know, he's a heavy run user. This offensive line really isn't built to move people. And Kyron Williams isn't exactly a dynamic running back, but he is, you know, for some reason, even though he's more of a shifty runner, they made him a little bit more physical in this Madden. It could be interesting, but, you know, with a lack of an offensive line, of lack of a receiver really stretching the field on this team, and a lack of a, you know, defensive presence, I think that kind of makes this a 1 out of 5 because there's just not much to work off of with the roster, the user, the mesh. So that's kind of where we're working with Eric versus Fiend here and the Los Angeles Rams roster. So moving on to 26, we have Avery with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We have a user who is a 6 out of 20 overall score. Now, this is the first user who's going to be a 2 because last year he did play one actual year at the Cardinals. He went about 500, a little under 500. And we also say the roster is a 2 out of 5 and the team fit is a 2 out of 5. Now, the Bucs probably are the best roster for winning right now of any team that we mentioned thus far. They still have, you know, they have kind of a good mix of young and old. They have, you know, Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield, but they also still have Mike Evans, Vita Vea, Levante David, Chris Godwin. They have the Rashad White too. I think Baker Mayfield's a serviceable bridge quarterback. So the roster is kind of a 2 out of 5 in terms of assets. I think based off of what we've seen, what little we saw from the Cardinals, you know, he likes to pass the ball. He likes to run out of shotgun. The Bucs are good at that. The problem is they provide very little to no defensive versatility because of their lack of corners, their lack of, you know, much of that. Also, I'd say Avery doesn't have much of a defensive identity, so it's hard to really definitively say that a team fit is more than 2 out of 5 with this team. Now, 6 is still the best score that we have thus far, but, you know, I'd lean more toward unknown than underdog because we don't really know. And I'd say that the same thing for most of these. Every user except for Eric versus Fiend thus far, I'd lean toward unknown rather than underdog because we just don't have enough of a sample size with them. With Eric versus Fiend recently, he's still given in a good amount of seasons in past Maddens before this one, and he's shown to kind of be like deficient in terms of being able to build and construct a roster. No slight to him, that's just kind of the facts. But yeah, I mean, this roster overall, good mixture of players ready to win now, and pieces to build off of. Antoine Winfield and Tristan Wirfs kind of the highlight of that. And the second user, by the way, revealed in the NFC South already. We have obviously Enfrizzi. I'm sorry, not Enfrizzi. We have Killing with the Panthers, and Avery with the Buccaneers. So kind of already a second division opponent carved out there. So already 2 users out of the NFC South revealed. Could even potentially be a repeat of last Madden, where it was kind of open season on the NFC South. It was perceived as the worst division, but it was also wide open for anyone involved, and they exceeded expectations. So maybe same thing this year. Moving on to number 25, though. We have the Dallas Cowboys, and that'd be Raw Dog. He's kind of the first user to be able to play the full Madden, last Madden, and still be ranked a 1 out of 10. He's definitely leaning underdog more so than anything else. Now, obviously, the Dallas Cowboys going this late in the draft it was a shock to me, so it's probably a shock to all of you. I get that the contract situation is weird in Dallas, and they're not like deep with a lot of talent, but their top end talent rivals that of anyone in the league. Micah Parsons is probably the best defensive asset for SOB, so that's a guy you're going to have the whole franchise. CeeDee Lamb also can go toe-to-toe with just about any receiver in terms of value. And then beyond that, obviously, you have a lot of question marks depending on what you want to do. But still, a crazy roster. 3 out of 5. First 3 out of 5 we gave for a roster, like we said. I see the team fits a 2 out of 5 with Raw, because I think he likes to give a lot of multiple defensive fronts. I think Parsons will help with that. And defensively, from a front 7 standpoint, this team fits really well with him. But beyond that, I don't see a lot of similarities with his play style and the team's construction, because they can't really run the ball. They can't set up the play action game. They can drop back pass, but obviously that's kind of not his strength, because he turns the ball over a lot when he just drops back and passes the ball. And I also don't think Dak is a great quarterback for him in terms of play style and things of that nature. Now, obviously, he has the luxury of being able to let Dak go or re-sign him. He has that option this year. I think the Cowboys could go in a lot of different directions from a roster standpoint, because of the way their contracts are set up, where so many people could get shipped off, so many people could get re-signed. It's really interesting, but the 2 cornerstones are obviously CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. You still have veterans like DeMarcus Lawrence, of course. Of course, you have Dak Prescott. You have Brandon Cooks at receiver. You have Eric Kendricks at linebacker. You still have your fair share worth the guys here. And then, of course, at corner you have Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs. So, I think those 2 are going to be good as well, if deployed properly. And then at the line, you still have Zach Martin, of course. You still have Tyler Smith. I believe they got a rookie tackle, Tyler Guyton. So, they have a lot of offensive line talent, mixed of young, old, and, and otherwise. And, overall, obviously the best roster. Now, Raw is probably the least likely to succeed with them because of his resume recently. Now, whether he can change that narrative is up to him. But being the first team revealed in the NFC East is rough this far, and it means you're going to be, the least. You're going to be the 4th favorite team to win the division pretty much every year. If Las Vegas was putting betting odds down on SOB. So moving on to number 24, we have the New Orleans Saints, and the 3rd team already for the NFC South. And then the first spoiler tier, we have a 7 out of 10 score for Cuzzo with the New Orleans Saints. Now, the roster is pretty abysmal, but he kind of elevates this beyond, funny enough, beyond a underdog tier with his user skill, first 4 out of 10 user, because I believe his ability to really construct a team, to control tempo, control pace, play tight man coverage, and force a lot of lower scoring games that are kind of fewer possessions. It is a skill set, and it's something that he's able to consistently do. It's a very specific niche, but it works for him, and it kind of propels him into the spoiler tier, because this roster is not very good. Obviously, you have Derek Hart, quarterback, with a terrible contract. Spencer Rattler is probably going to be the one on the field for him, I would imagine. At running back, it's probably going to be the rookie Kendra Miller. Alvin Kamara, for some reason, has no abilities or anything of that nature, kind of with a rough contract as well. The Saints are kind of in cap hell to start off, too, so you're going to have to do a lot of financial maneuvering. And although they do have talent, the reason why they're 1 out of 5 is because of the cap hell. It's going to make it really tough for them to really have a lot of flexibility early on to build. So that's going to be rough for them. At receiver, Olave is kind of the guy. Everyone else there is just kind of supplementary. So you got to build Olave. Everyone else, like I said, supplementary. Shaheed's worth mentioning because of his speed. Shaheed's speed is definitely dangerous, but I think he's one of the players that has to be re-signed with really bad cap space. We're talking like they're in the negatives to open up, so that's rough. From an offensive line standpoint, Fuaga, the rookie left tackle, is going to probably be an asset. Cuzzo loves to run these zone stretch concepts constantly, so running to the left side behind Fuaga for 10 years is actually a genuine, probably the best part of a fit of this team. This team is a 2 out of 5 fit, but the best part offensively is definitely running behind their tackles, Fuaga, and running behind Ramczyk until he eventually hangs it up or moves on. But those 2 good tackles run behind, and especially Fuaga for the entirety of the franchise. And then you have Eric McCoy, who's kind of a good franchise center who's going to be there for a while as well. So you really just – the offensive line's kind of underratedly good, but not anything special. And then defensively, Chase Young's worth mentioning. He's on a contract year because he signed a 1-year deal with them in real life. He can definitely disrupt and make a name for himself and make plays. But I think he has to be resigned, and I don't think they're going to have the cap space to do it. So maybe he can figure out a way to do it. I haven't, actually gone and seen if there is a way to create the avenue for that. There likely is. There's usually solutions to everything with that type of stuff, but you'll have to make sacrifices elsewhere, as you usually do. So that could be a stud for him. He's only 25 still. Could still be a really good player. You still have Brian Barisi, obviously. He was a rookie last year. Demario Davis will probably give you 1 solid year. He'll probably play solid in the middle. But the main reason that this team is a 2 out of 5 fit, not just the tackles. The tackles, if it was just the tackles alone, it'd still be a 1 out of 5 because there's just not enough there in and of itself to make that a 2 out of 5. It's the corners. Having Marshawn Lattimore, who's going to be still a really good player. Having Paulson Adebo, who's still a solid number 2. And then having a rookie Kool-Aid McKinstry, that's a legit corner trio that is going to enable him to be able to run a lot of heavy man coverage early on and often probably in the franchise, which is ideally what he likes to do. He likes to play tight cover 1, cover 2, man defense, and really just make people make tight window throws. And these 3 corners are the main reason why that fit is probably going to work on, at least early on. And then, of course, you have Tyrann Mathieu, who, if you want to bring him down in man coverage on slot receivers and stuff too, that'll help a lot as well. So that's kind of the reason he is the first spoiler team, is mainly because of his user. The fit helps a lot, or a little rather. And yeah, that's kind of where the roster sits. Now, again, the roster and assets really isn't that bad when you just look at the roster. But when you consider the cap space, it moves down to a 1. So, yeah, that's our first spoiler user. Again, that's the 3rd team already in the NFC South. So we already have Carolina gone, Tampa Bay gone, New Orleans gone, all within the first from 32 to 24. So then really the only team left is Atlanta. So whoever, got Atlanta or whoever put Atlanta high on their list is really hoping probably that it's them, because they're thinking, oh, I'm gonna run away with this division. I'm gonna dominate this division because I'm far and away, the favorite. If it's not someone who comes up soon. So I guess we'll see. It could be wide open. It could be a clear favorite. We're gonna see how that turns out. But the NFC South already having 3 teams revealed is crazy, considering a lot of divisions haven't had anyone revealed. So going to number 23 though. We have the Indianapolis Colts. We have Jason, who, again, is a spoiler user. Now, he's a 3 out of 10, so he drops in a little bit of quality from Cuzzo in terms of user quality. But the team fit and the roster is a little bit better. Anthony Richardson is a big part of that. They obviously also have more cap space to work with, which is a big deal. Anthony Richardson, the sky is the limit, as B showed last year. Now he played with him as a lot more pocket passer who could run when necessary, whereas I'm guessing Jason's probably going to deploy him a little bit more in terms of just like an option Cam Newton style quarterback. Now I could be wrong, but that's kind of how I'm feeling with it. Now Jonathan Taylor's obviously also a big asset with that. I think that kind of plays those two are the main reason this is a 2 out of 5 fit, because I really feel like if Jason can implement the option into his scheme effectively, being able to run option with those two guys and work his short passing game that's efficient and safe, but has a ceiling cap to it. I think Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson can raise the ceiling for that kind of conservative offense and make it a legit threat, because then you have to worry about the option. You also have to worry about these RPOs. You have to worry about these quick shooting plays, and then you have Anthony Richardson who could just take it and get moving with him. And receiver, you still have Michael Pittman, who I think is a great fit for Jason, actually. Great receiver fit. Probably one of the best spots Michael Pittman could have gone, because a lot of people will overlook him and not think he's very good. But a big-bodied receiver who's going to make contested catches, a lot of very Michael Thomas-esque. Going to make a lot of these tight contested 3rd down and 6, 3rd down and 7 conversions and make these big plays. And then you have Josh Downs, who in of its own right is a good, high potential number 2. Alec Pierce, another big-bodied receiver who could be developed to be another guy that's like Michael Pittman, only a little faster. And then you have Adonai Mitchell, who can kind of be your burner, your guy to take off the top. So, I mean, that's an interesting receiver room with a lot of different skill sets. I think skill sets that fit Jason. So you're kind of seeing why the fit is a 2 out of 5 here, and why he's a spoiler user because of that. And then the offensive line also, you still have Quentin Nelson, who's a stud still. You have Ryan Kelly, you have Braden Smith. So all in all, the offense is a good fit. Now, the reason why it's only a 2 out of 5 and not more is the defense, right? The defense has a lot of holes. You do have DeForest Buckner, right? You do have speed at linebacker, but I mean, other than that, you're working with a lot of developmental pieces. And because of all those developmental pieces, and Jason really is going to be probably a zone heavy user that kind of needs their guys to play smart, play in their zone, be able to get pressure with just his defensive line. It's not really going to be a good fit off the bat, and that's kind of the reason why it caps at a 2 out of 5 for right now. But still a spoiler user. I believe he's the second user already revealed in the AFC South. So we got Blackamunchie as Tennessee, and Jason as the Colts, going to be playing twice a year. So that's interesting. Already having 2 AFC South teams revealed, having 2 AFC West teams revealed in the Broncos and Raiders, and having 3 NFC South teams revealed. So already, you can see that a lot of these divisions could have one definitive alpha potentially. And, a lot of these divisions could be very competitive because there's been no one revealed yet. So I guess we're going to see. Moving on to 22, we have the Seattle Seahawks. We have GKRC. He's also a spoiler. He's tied for the best user ranking so far, a 4 out of 10. He's tied with Cuzzo. They were both 4 out of 10s. The roster is a 2 still, because we'll get into that. But the team fit is a 3. And I think that's the highest team fit so far. And the reason being is because the way he played was really trusting his receivers a lot from what I saw last year. I didn't watch a lot of his games because it just wasn't match up against them a lot, so there was no reason to. And he wasn't playing in a lot of big profile games. He was kind of under the radar as, reconstructing, kind of turning over this Broncos team that was, just middling. But with this Seahawks team, with all these players with high upside, I think the fit is really good. I think having all these high upside players with the user who's smart and knows how to utilize these players is a great fit. I think having players like Kenneth Walker, having players like DK Metcalf, having players like Tariq Woolen, Devin Witherspoon, you have the rookie defensive lineman. I believe his name is Byron Murphy the second. That's who it is. You have all these guys. You have somebody who knows how to deploy them. All these guys with high upside, who maybe isn't great at developing guys to become high upside, but when you give them guys that are already high upside, I think this could be a sneaky team. I think of all the teams that have been rated spoiler so far, the most likely to exceed the ranking of spoiler and ascend beyond that to like a playoff team, or potentially even far beyond that, is GKRC with the Seahawks because of the fit. I think the roster, it could have been argued to be a 3, but it is a 2 just because the top end talent isn't excellent. Your best asset is probably DK Metcalf and Tariq Woolen, and they're both like 25, 26, like middle 80 overall receivers that are in corner, who's just fast, and they have the ability to be better, but that's kind of where they're at. But a really good, well-rounded middle roster, like middle part of the roster, because they have a lot of good players, but they just don't have a lot of great players. Hence why they're only a 2 out of 5. But that's going to be really interesting. I really feel like that. But that being already the second NFC West team, I believe, revealed. The second being the Rams, with Eric versus Fiend, I think is interesting as well. So we're, like I said, constructing a lot of divisions out already, whereas I believe no AFC North teams have been revealed yet. I believe no NFC North teams have been revealed yet. I believe only one NFC East team has been revealed. So that's kind of where we're at. A lot of divisions are getting built out, and some divisions have either yet to be revealed or only have one team. So the NFC West kind of joins that. In terms of moving forward, they have a lot of young pieces. The Seahawks do. Like we already mentioned, Devin Witherspoon. We mentioned Byron Murphy. Charles Cross could be a potential tackle. They have Lucas, the other tackle, Abraham Lucas. Now, whether he gets instructed or not is to be determined. But I just think this is a good fit. I don't have a lot of X's and O's reasons because I didn't get to watch how GKRC sets up his schemes. But just from a philosophical standpoint, I have a gut feeling because of the way he thinks and reacts. I feel as though this is going to be a good team fit, and that kind of puts him as a 9 out of 20. So moving on to 21 now. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this would be Twan. He's also a threat level spoiler. This is the first team in the AFC North. Finally, we were mentioning the AFC North, how no one had been revealed yet. Well, here you go. Here's the first user in the AFC North. Another user who's a 4 out of 10 to go along with Cuzzo and GKRC. Now, this team, it has talent, right? But not quite a 3. The only 3 that we have so far is the Cowboys. And the reason being is, they have guys like TJ Watt. They have Minkah Fitzpatrick. They have Cam Hayward. So they got a high upside defense. But the offense has a lot of question marks, right? Really no quarterback unless, you consider Justin Fields your quarterback, which he could be. But, he also might not be. Running back, you're kind of capped in terms of upside with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, unless you're a power runner, which I don't think Twan is necessarily a power runner, but he also doesn't really have a high preference. I think George Pickens could be really good. You got speed at receiver, but you don't really have a lot of young receivers other than George Pickens. Pat Freiermuth could be a weapon for you, and Darnell Washington could well be as well at tight end. The offensive line, there's not much there to talk about. And then this defense, you got these superstars. You got Highsmith and Queen at linebacker as well. You have Joey Porter Jr., but it just doesn't mesh well. I don't know. It doesn't feel like the defense is going to create enough plays to be able to just like compensate for the lack of top to bottom talent that they have. So that's why they're only a 2 out of 5 roster fit. I think the team fit this is probably the closest to a 3 out of 5 team fit that we've had that wasn't already named. So obviously GKRC was already listed as a 3 out of 5 team fit with the Seahawks. But if I was doing halves, if there was 2 out of 5, 2.5 out of 5, then this would have been a 2.5 because I think there's a lot to like about this meshing, but there's also a lot to not like. I think Twan not having a quarterback that is accurate in the short to intermediate game and not having a good offensive line to protect him is very concerning. And I think that's going to be something that bites him a lot early and often within the franchise. But, all the players that we listed, legitimate threats to make plays. Steelers not paying a quarterback any crazy amount of money, so that's nice. But they're paying T.J. Watt a lot of money. They're paying Minka Fitzpatrick a lot of money. Now those guys are worth it, but you know, you don't have a ton of cap flexibility. You have some, so that's kind of another spoiler team. And now we're gonna finally be moving into the top 20 with Rick's and the New York Football Giants. So this is the second team revealed in the NFC East, along with the Cowboys, who have already been revealed with Raw Dog. So this is kind of a spoiler team. Another user who's a 4 out of 10. So kind of joining that little meshing of users who are 4 out of 10s. The Giants are obviously very talented in a lot of spots, but they are also very deficient in a lot of spots. Now, this feels right because Rick's kind of, whenever you think of SOB and you think of the Giants, obviously AB had a ton of success last year with them, and hats off to him. But you're really never going to, like, there's iconic teams, right? There's iconic users with iconic teams. There's Consoles Dolphins, there's Trails Eagles, there's Black Bunches Colts. There's these teams that you think about. There's Smokes Bengals, or if you want to consider him a Titans. There's TJ's, when he came into the league with the Colts. There's these teams that you just think about. Now, I think when you think of teams, right, and you think of users, you think of like Consoles Dolphins and Trails Eagles, right? And then right there behind them, in terms of like iconic users with iconic teams and kind of thinking of them, Rick's Giants are right there, right? So this feels right to give him the Giants and for him to have the Giants back here and really be with his team. It feels right. It feels like all is right with the world with this. But getting into the actual roster of it, Daniel Jones is a big question mark that's getting paid a lot of money. He doesn't have a dynamic runner, right? Devin Singletary is not a dynamic runner, but he does have Malik Neighbors, so that could be interesting. I really think from an offensive standpoint, this team doesn't really fit Rick's very much at all. I think it's very lacking in terms of a dynamic runner. I think the interior of the offensive line is a very big question mark. I think the quarterback isn't going to compensate for his lack of passing prowess. I don't think Malik Neighbors will be fully utilized, although I think he will have success, as do I think Theo Johnson, the young tight end out of Penn State, will have success. I just don't think they're going to be fully utilized. I think Andrew Thomas is going to be fully utilized, and I think Evan Neal will be developed. But really the reason this is a 2 out of 5 fit is the defense, right? Rick's defense kind of always a multiple versatile defense, having guys like Thibodeau, having guys like Okereke, having guys like Dexter Lawrence, of course, who's just a dominant beast, having Ojulari, Brian Burns, of course. I think that's the biggest part of this fit, right? The offense just feels completely non-fit, and that's why it's only 2 out of 5. Is the defense feels, especially the front of the defense, the front 7 of the defense feels like a perfect fit, but the rest of this team is just, it really feels like it has to be changed and adjusted to fit Rick's, right? It really feels like, he has to find his quarterback. It feels like he has to find his running back. It feels like he has to build the interior of that offensive line. It feels like he has to build the back end of the defense, Deontay Banks notwithstanding, of course. So that front 7 with Rick's, I think, is really going to be fun to watch him utilize all those weapons with Brian Burns and Thibodeau and how he deploys them all. He's really creative with his blitz packages, so putting guys into creative spots, getting them 101s, that's going to be really fun and really interesting to watch. So I think that's the best part, most exciting part of this team. He lands a spoiler, and like I said, just having Rick's as the Giants, it feels like all is right with the world whenever that happens in an SOB year. So getting finally inside the top 20 with number 19, we have the Arizona Cardinals, Pep Pearson. That's what he got, and another spoiler. Now this is interesting, right? Because Pep is a user who, all in all, is, he's a good user, or at least a middling user, but he takes a team that has an aging quarterback, although skill set wise kind of fits the way he likes to play. at 27 in Madden. It's aging. But the main guy you want to talk about, Marvin Harrison Jr. I think with Pep Pearson, that's the biggest thing when you talk about team fit. It's the Kyler to Marvin Harrison connection, because I really feel like if there is a guy that likes thus far that likes to funnel his offense through one receiver, who really likes to just give him targets, high volume, it's going to be Pep. And giving him Marvin Harrison Jr., he should put up pretty good numbers, and he should definitely still reach, if not his ceiling, close to his ceiling, even if it takes him a little bit longer. That's really interesting. You obviously have Marvin Harrison Jr., you have Trey McBride, you have Paris Johnson Jr. on the offensive line. But yeah, that's the most interesting part when you talk about team fit. That's why it's a 3 out of 5 is kind of the offense, its weapons, being able to move the ball with Kyler Murray. Although he is, like we said, aging, pushing the ball downfield, utilizing Marvin Harrison, utilizing Trey McBride, using these other role player wide receivers, the Zay Joneses, the Michael Wilsons. But I think the offense really fits his skill set well, and that's kind of why it comes in at 3 out of 5. Now, defensively, he was never really known as or seen as a defensive guru anyways, but the roster defensively is not very good. You have Budda Baker, and you have a bunch of guys. Like, you don't have anybody that's special or it's really you want to watch out for with high upside. It's really just that offensive connection. I think he's going to put up numbers, and he's going to put up points in the first year. And whether he develops Kyler Murray at the ripe age of 27 now is unlikely, but it's possible. So that's kind of where we're standing with the Cardinals. Now, he joins the NFC West, which already has GKRC as the Seahawks, which already has Eric Grisfini as the Rams. So, I mean, that division's up for grabs right now. I mean, now, depending on who the 49ers user is, it's really anyone's division. Right? I mean, the Cardinals being the second one off the board in that division is pretty surprising to me. I feel like the Seahawks are a little bit better from a talent standpoint, but I get it because of Marvin Harrison. I really do. I think he's that good of a player. So, moving on to number 18, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars with Bug here, filling out the AFC South even more. We already had the Titans with Black and Muncher. We already have the Colts with I believe it was Jason who had the Colts. I'm thinking on the top of my head here, so hopefully that's correct. And then now we have Bug as the Jaguars. So it's two guys with similar skill sets in Bug and Jason. Pretty similar in, like I said, skill set. Different, though. Very different. So you obviously have Trevor Lawrence here. With Bug, I don't really know that he's going to be necessary. I think Trevor Lawrence, if he didn't have that big contract, would be more of a trade asset to Bug than a guy who's going to be deployed as like a franchise quarterback. Now, I don't know. Maybe he still will be pretty good. He'll do what like Bryce Young did for him last year, which is make timely throws on third down when he needs him to. But having Travis Etienne here is the biggest asset that you could possibly ask for Bug, right? Having a running back with the ability, the speed, the breakaway, the potential that Travis Etienne has is the number one reason for this 2 out of 5 fit. Now, 2 out of 5 is still not very good. Like we've had a lot of 2 out of 5 guys. But Etienne is the biggest reason for that fit, right? It makes it make a little bit more sense. You also have Brian Thomas Jr., the rookie receiver, who can stretch the field, push it downfield. 95 speed is a big deal. You can definitely he can be the guy who kind of stretches the field for Bug. He's obviously going to run the ball, give you a heavy dose of run the ball down your throat, and then he's going to try to stretch the field with Brian Thomas Jr. So, and then of course you have Evan Ingram, who can kind of do the same thing from the tight end position. He's not much of a blocker, so not a great fit for Bug because you kind of want more of a guy who's going to get his hands dirty and block as a tight end. But he could make some nice vertical plays for him on play action. So the offensive line, you have Cam Robinson and you have Brandon Sheriff. You have the young Anton Harrison. But, nobody other than Sheriff that's really going to move people off the ball. I think it's pretty good in the combo, like I said, between the offensive line, who's all right, pretty good run blockers, and then Etienne is the best part of this team fit, right? Having a team that can run the ball. having a quarterback that can throw off play action. I think the offense is actually a pretty good fit, mainly the run game with Bug. Now, defensively, you do have Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen rushing the quarterback, so that'll help him from like a pass rushing standpoint. You have a Luke Galon to play, the user role, but you have a bunch of young, unproven corners. Tyson Campbell's pretty good, but he's not going to be able to just sit in man coverage like he loves to do. Sit in cover one the first year and just lock people up. Unless his pass rush just far exceeds it, he's not going to be able to. And without his defense really keeping games lower scoring and holding people and getting these big turnovers and stops, I just don't see that being a great fit. It's a fine fit for right now because of the run game, but it's not a great fit because he really relies, maybe more than anyone else in the league, on having elite corners. He really needs those elite corners to be able to play heavy volume man coverage and keep the score down. That's what he needs. So now Etienne still by himself with that offensive line creates a 2 out of 5 fit, but nothing special, right? So that kind of fills out the AFC South except for the Houston Texans. So we're, like I said, we're setting up a lot of teams with three teams in their division already, and then you have that one that we're waiting for, and it's setting up for a lot of potential like clear defined alphas in their division, alpha users that'll just be able to kind of take over the division and take a stranglehold over it. So that's kind of interesting if that's how a lot of these divisions are getting structured. But moving on to number 17, we're very close now to the top half of users with number 17. We have the Chicago Bears, who are shocking that they fell this far. So the Bears are with Jasik, the first playoff caliber team, the first playoff caliber threat that we have listed on the rankings, because I think this fit is incredible when you talk about Jasik with the Bears. It's not a perfect fit, but it's pretty close, right? It all starts with Caleb Williams, who's going to open up as an X factor, excellent physical tools, a really good borderline great arm, good borderline great mobility, good borderline great accuracy, and then he has obviously the ceiling, the sky is the limit with him. At running back, DeAndre Swift's kind of the perfect running back for Jasek. He's a guy who's going to be able to contribute in the receiving game. He's a guy who's going to be able to take a little bit of load off the passing game, but he's not a guy that you kind of feel the need to feed and prioritize over the passing game. So kind of the perfect runner, the perfect running back for Jasek. And then at receiver, you have maybe the best trio in Madden, maybe the best trio in real life, maybe the best trio on the game. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Romeo Doomsday. You have your young guy, and Romeo Doomsday is going to make plays for you, going to be your long-term answer. You have DJ Moore, who's your alpha, your number one in his prime. You have Keenan Allen, who's kind of at the tail end of his prime, who's going to create your slot plays for you. So working Caleb Williams with these three receivers, I think Jasik has a really good chance of making the playoffs early and often this SOB. I think that's an excellent fit. That in and of itself, if it was just all of that by itself, that's a 3 out of 5 fit because of how good that fits on paper and in the way he likes to play. And then you look at the defense and you're just like, okay, they have Montez Sweat. They have Tremaine Edmonds. They have TJ Edwards. They have Jalen Johnson. They have Kevin Byard. They have Jaquan Brisker. They have like nobody that's like a splash playmaker, but a bunch of really solid, smart veterans that'll really help kind of hopefully allow him to win a lot of games, 27, 24, 30 to 27 type games. And that's why the fit really makes sense. And that's why he's kind of elevated all the way to the playoffs. Obviously, the main reason is Caleb Williams, that receiving core, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift. But the defense kind of being the way it's constructed, which is not a great defense, but good and fits well with Jasik, boosts it to a 4. Now, it's not perfect because there are little nitpicky holes off the line. It's not perfect for the way that you'd like to have it ideally. So it's not a perfect fit. It's rare to give a perfect fit here. So I can't say it's a 5 out of 5, but, still first playoff ranked team. filling out the NFC North a little bit. Finally, getting the first user in the NFC North at number 17. Having the Bears be the last team off of the board in the NFC North and being taken all the way at 17 is not on my bingo card, or was not on my bingo card, and is shocking, to say the least, in my opinion, because the Bears have so much talent and so much potential, and we'll see if, Jaseek's never had a quarterback like Caleb Williams to start, so that could be really exciting. And if I were him, I would be really excited, because this could be legitimately his best chance to have a great year in SOB that he's ever had so far. So getting in finally to the top half of the league. You have the second user already for the NFC North, and the second playoff ranked caliber user in Novocaine with the Green Bay Packers. You also have the first user, I believe, who is ranked a 5 out of 10. So already kind of middling there. This roster is also really good. Now, it's on par with the Bears, I'd say. And it fits well with Novocaine, right? A lot of quick throws. Jordan Love's going to be good for that. He can also stretch the field occasionally on play action if you want him to. Josh Jacobs is a really good running back to have with Novocaine. He's not going to create a lot of big splash plays, but he's perfect for those 4, 6, 8, 10-yard runs, just wearing down a defense with these high-volume RPO runs, these quick plays. A.J. Dillon's a perfect complement to that, so that makes sense. And then you have a bunch of just guys who you don't really have to feed, but they all, serve their own role. You have, your guys who kind of can get a touch pass, and Bo Melton and Jaden Reed. You have a guy like Romeo Dobbs, who's a reliable target. You have Christian Watson, who can stretch the field for you. So these weapons make sense from a fit standpoint. There's no one that's like an alpha. Ideally, Christian Watson becomes that with his size and speed and athletic ability. But that's that. And then of course you have at offensive line, you have Zach Tom, you have Elton Jenkins. Those are kind of your main guys from an offensive line standpoint. And because of the rest of the deficiencies in the offensive line, that's probably the main thing that drops the fit from what could have been a 4 to a 3, because this defense is phenomenal. So lacking elite or even really good offensive line talent drops it what could have been a 4 to a 3. Defensively, obviously, you have Rashawn Gary, you have Lucas Van Ness, you have guys like Kenny Clark, you have Edrin Cooper, who's a good rookie, who could be billed at linebacker. You have Quay Walker, who's still young. At corner, you have the alpha Jair Alexander kind of back there. So working with all of that, defensively, you have an embarrassment of riches virtually. You have, of course, at safety Xavier McKinney and Javon Bullard. So, with the way Novocaine likes to play offense, really quick, efficient stuff, wearing down a defense, I think this defense will get enough stops for him to be, a legit playoff threat here. All in all, I think it's a good fit. The best user technically ranked from a user standpoint so far. And the Packers roster is as good as any roster we've seen thus far, right? Really talented defensively, really young offensively, high upside players. So makes sense. Switching to 15, moving inside the top half, we have Stacks with the Los Angeles Chargers, and we're moving back down a little bit here to spoiler. Now, he is a high-rated spoiler. He's not like a low-ranked spoiler, but the reason being, it's not his user, right? He's a 5, but the roster is only a 2. Now, the reason for that is you kind of have Justin Herbert on offense, but your weapons kind of on offense amount to Ladd McConkey, who's a rookie. It amounts to Quentin Johnson coming off a bad rookie year, and then a bunch of no-name guys, right? You have bookend tackles in Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, so that's something to look forward to. But you have a mediocre interior offensive line. You really have Ladd McConkey, the DJ Charks of the world at weapons, but your offense is going to have to be developed, and Stacks hasn't shown an elite ability to be able to do that. Now, he had C.J. Stroud throughout the duration of SOB last year, so I think having successful years with Herbert is definitely on the board. But elevating this team and this offense to where he needs it to be to have high success, I don't see that. But it's possible, right? And then you look at the defense. The defense really, other than Bosa, pass and Mac pass rush wise, they don't really have much. Now I know Mac is, and Bosa is a good combo, especially on Madden, but Mac's not going to last much longer, and Bosa's going to be regressing. So you really got that for 1, maybe 2 years, and then you're going to have to really reconstruct the whole defensive line because you have nothing else there. You have no depth. You have no young guys to really look to. Nothing. At linebacker, you have Junior Colson, who's a good rookie, can be good. You have Asante Samuel Jr. on the back end, who's kind of your main guy at corner that you want to watch out for. And, of course, you have Derwin James. There's other guys that have some promise there, but all in all, the defense is hit or miss. There's obviously they're very good at the top end talent. They have Derwin James, Bosa, Mac, and then they have a bunch of guys with some potential. You have Asante Samuel Jr., who's good in his own right. But all in all, from a fit standpoint, like I said, 3 out of 5, it's a good fit because the defense is going to create big plays for Stacks. Offensively, Herbert's a really good fit. Probably the main reason that this is a 3 because he kind of probably gets it to a 2 himself, 2.5 himself. Herbert does. And then the rest of the big playmakers kind of push it to a 3. So it just makes sense. The roster by itself is only a 2 because, like we said, it's just lacking talent in a lot of places. They're lacking weapons. They're lacking interior offensive line. They're lacking defensive line and pass rush depth beyond Bosa and Mack, who are both aging. They have young linebackers who could develop, but might not. They have Asante Samuel and Derwin in the back end. They have a good free safety, but other than that, they're kind of lacking. So it's just a lot of depth. It's a lot of development that needs to happen for this team. Again, like I said, I don't give halves for metrics, but if we were giving halves, it'd be a 2.5 out of 5 roster. We just don't give those out. So, all in all, spoiler, could very well be proven wrong and could be a playoff team. Now, we already did reveal the Broncos. We already did reveal the Raiders for this, right? YP, AB's protege. We have Frizzy, who's kind of Bija's protege. So kind of Stacks is now the second year veteran of SOB here, kind of having to fend, or the sophomore guy trying to fend off these rookie SOB users who are trying to make a name for himself. Stacks wants to ascend to that next level and really be a consistent playoff team this year, and we'll see if he'll be able to do it on a consistent basis. So 14 here. We have the Buffalo Bills and Mitch. Remaining at spoiler here, going down to a 9 out of 20 total score. The reason being this roster is probably a little bit less talented than the Chargers. Probably a lot less talented than the Chargers, really. But you do have Josh Allen, who's a better version of Herbert in virtually every way. So that's kind of something that elevates them a little bit beyond the Chargers. You have Keon Coleman, who's going to be a good, probably number 1 receiver for Mitch. Now, he's not fast, but he is physical. He can separate. You got the good tight end combo of Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid if you're able to develop one or both of them. So that's noteworthy. Defensively, you still have Greg Rousseau. You have Ed Oliver. You don't have anybody that's like this top-end player that's young, but you do have Matt Milano, who's like an old veteran linebacker. So, I mean, you have pieces here and there. You have some young guys. The main guy you really have is Josh Allen, and that's kind of why this sits at a 2 out of 5 is like, what other guys are you going to have to build around other than Josh Allen for the long haul that's already established? Like, there's not a lot of established players that you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to have these guys for at least 5, 6, 7 years, right? It's Josh Allen, and that's kind of the list for this team. The fit makes sense, though. Mitch is a high-volume passer, loves to pass the ball, loves to try to fit the ball in the tight windows, loves to throw the ball deep. And Josh Allen, in and of itself, I don't really think you need to make much more of a case because I don't know if there's a better quarterback fit to a user on the list than Josh Allen and Mitch. It just makes sense. He can make every throw. Mitch loves to try throws. He loves to buy time and create plays. Josh Allen and Mitch is like perfect combination, lockstep, And then you throw in a couple talented players like James Cook and Curtis Samuel and Ed Oliver and Gregory Rousseau, and you wind up with a 3 out of 5 fit. I think makes sense. And overall 9 out of 20 spoiler. Also with the division now, what are you looking at? You're looking at the 32nd user, SL, WJR, and Mitch are both the users of the AFC East so far, meaning that the final 2 users of the AFC East are within the top 13. So Mitch is going to have an uphill climb, whereas last year it was really an open season division with the NFC South. He's really going to be challenged this year and be asked to play and punch above his weight class, really. So good luck to him. Maybe he will exceed the spoiler ranking. I feel like that's fair given the roster talent and the fit, though. Although I think Josh Allen and Mitch is going to be really fun to watch this year, for sure. Moving on to 13. We have Xavier with the Cleveland Browns. It's a story as old as time. When I was mentioning teams earlier, I deliberately tried to leave out, when I was talking about, iconic users with iconic teams, I deliberately tried to leave out Xavier with the Browns because, that's had happened again this year, as it usually does almost every year in SOB. I didn't want to, allude to it necessarily or directly foreshadow it because, yes, it happened again. And yes, I'm putting him at contender, and I don't care that he only made the playoffs 3 times last year. I don't care that he underperformed and underwhelmed last year. I don't care that he was ranked in the top 5 or 6, and now he's number 13. I don't care about any of that because this is the team for Xavier. This is a perfect fit. This is a quarterback who can make some throws but doesn't need to make all the throws. This is Nick Chubb, who he is the best runner with Nick Chubb that we've seen in SOB, period. Amari Cooper will separate and create plays for him. Jerry Jeudy will separate and create plays for him. Elijah Moore will separate and create plays for him, all off play action likely, who probably already has a nice scheme constructed and built out for himself. And Njoku is now a superstar, going to make plays for him, going to be a mismatch on play action. I think this offensive line is good. It's not great, but you have Conklin, you have Teller, you have Batonio, and you have Jedrick Wills. So you have guys that are going to protect, that are going to create running lanes. It's borderline great. They just don't have a really top-end guy. They do have a superstar in, I believe, Teller. I think they gave superstar again. But Nick Chubb elevates this run game and this play action to being an ideal offense for Xavier. Like the ideal offense because you don't want – now the Watson contract's rough. I will say that. That's the Watson contract is the main thing that takes this roster from a 3 or from a 4 to a 3. It would be a 4 if Watson's contract was more reasonable, and that's tough. But from a fit standpoint, just from an X's and O's fit standpoint – this offense makes sense and fits Xavier to a glove. And as much as it fits Xavier offensively, I feel like this defense could even fit him even more because you have 2 superstar / X Factor pass rushers on the edge in Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith who are going to create havoc. I think Myles Garrett's going to be more impactful this year than he's been in years past for Xavier with the way pass rush kind of is ramped up a little bit. I think having Mike Hall Jr. on the inside as a rookie, I think he's going to be kind of a guy that is developed and able to make a name for himself inside. I think having Devin Bush as a fast linebacker and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, JOK, having those 2 borderline 90-speed linebackers to kind of mix and mesh between usering and creating these lurks for Xavier it makes sense. It's a great second level fit. And then you talk about the corners and you have Denzel Ward, who's a superstar. You have Greg Newsome. You have Martin Emerson, who's still young and plays slot. You have Cameron Mitchell, who's a great 4th corner to have as a young guy. You have Miles Harden, even, who's a solid 5th corner. This corner room is deep. It is good at the top end. It is probably the best man coverage room, or one of the best, in the league to open up Madden. It's a great coverage room. Now, the safeties are fine. They're not great. And that's probably the one thing you could argue that knocks this down a little bit from a 5 to a 4. But I really just think the pass rush and the coverage will go hand in hand with more man coverage scheme that Xavier likes to tend to run, and I think the play action is really going to work with this team. I think this is a perfect fit. I really feel strongly that this is a perfect fit. I think contender makes sense for him because it's just such a strong fit. He's the first 6 out of 10 user that we have, and the roster is very good. Like I said, I think the roster would be better if the cap space was better. Or the roster / assets would be better if the cap space was better, but the cap space, especially from the Deshaun Watson deal, is kind of hampering this team a little bit. Now, if he can somehow get Deshaun out the door, get the cap space off his books, get a young quarterback to do everything Deshaun was doing for him, I think this could be really interesting. This could be very, very interesting. And I think, I really believe in his ability to succeed with the Browns this year. I really, really do. But moving on to number 12. And that's Keywick with the Bengals. Wow, that's interesting, right? I mean, you have Twan already with the Steelers, okay, and then you get X with the Bengals, and X and Key kind of always have this back and forth because honestly, their overall resumes aren't far apart. And then of course you have defensively. You have. The resume's not far apart, and then last year they both kind of underperformed. Neither of them won a playoff game in a tough AFC conference, both in tough divisions. Key gets ranked one spot above him, and then they get put in the same division with the Bengals and Browns in the AFC North. That's going to be must-see TV 2 times a year, every year. Xavier versus Key. They probably both feel like they're far better than the other. They both have... they're both going to be talking. They both have egos. It's going to be fun to watch, just from a rivalry standpoint. What a game that's going to be, or what a rivalry that's going to be. That's probably the most exciting rivalry we've had revealed thus far, and it might be the most exciting from an entertainment standpoint that we have. But getting into the actual roster for the Bengals, I'm sure Key's going to be really glad to see that he is still ranked a playoff user, but Xavier was ranked as a contender. I'm sure he'll be really happy about that. But that aside, their user is still the same. So they're ranked in terms of skill level. They're even, so, right? 6 out of 10 and 6 out of 10. The roster and the assets, the nod is given to Key, right? Key's given the nod to roster and assets, whereas Xavier only has a 3 out of 5. Key has a 4 out of 5. And then team fit is kind of the main difference, right? It's the main differentiating factor. I feel like that was a perfect team fit for X. I feel like for this, the offensive part of the team fit doesn't make a lot of sense, but the defense does. But we've never seen Key with a quarterback like Joe Burrow. We've just never have seen it. He played with Lamar Jackson, and he utilized his running ability in Madden 20. He had Dak in Madden 21 where he won a Super Bowl. He also then later had Jordan Love in that same Madden where he was pretty good. Obviously he's had success with these quarterbacks, but he's never had someone as good as Joe Burrow. Not by a long shot, I'd say, from a passing standpoint. And then you talk about these receivers. You have Jamar Chase. You have T. Higgins. That's definitely something to consider when you talk about his offense, his ability to make big plays. I think his offensive line is not very good. You have Trent Brown, obviously. You have the rookie Amarius Mims. Aside from that, this offensive line's not going to scare anybody. You have Orlando Brown, who's fine. So the running game is going to be mostly a non-factor. You don't really have a crazy great running back. You have Chase Brown, who probably will start with, but I don't think he's going to be like a game changer or anything. So you kind of just have a passing offense with a running user. So that fit doesn't make sense. That's why it's a 3 out of 5. Now, it still will be relatively effective probably, but it's not going to be as explosive as he could be if he had an elite run game. Now, defensively, Miles Murphy as a rookie on the edge with Trey Hendrickson. And then, obviously, on the back end, you have still Cam Taylor-Britt. You have Daxton Hill. You have DJ Turner. All these fast, young defensive backs to pair with a good edge room. And the defense makes sense, right? Like he's going to be versatile. He's going to mix in zone and man. He's going to call timely plays. He's going to get this defense playing at maximum capacity and firing on all cylinders, and that's why it makes sense. 3 out of 5 team fit. Now, if he can just figure out how to operate an offense with Joe Burrow at the helm and being for the front man and having the running game being secondary and completely kind of adjusting his play style, I think he could be successful. But I don't think he's going to be able to lean into the run game and win a Super Bowl with this team unless he gets a dynamic runner. But at that point, why even have Joe Burrow on the team, right? So, I mean, I guess we'll see. It's going to be interesting from a team fit perspective, but from a roster standpoint, this is the most talented roster we've seen. And user, in terms of key, it's tied for the best user that we've seen. So the best roster plus the tie for the best users that we've seen kind of puts us at a 13 out of 20. The fit isn't great or even ideal this late this early on the list. So that's kind of why he's only at a playoff caliber user, not seen as a true contender. Now I'm sure he'll take a slate to that, like I said, especially since Xavier was listed as a contender. Moving on to number 11. We have Hat with the Detroit Lions. He's also seen as a playoff caliber user at the 13 mark for the Detroit Lions. Now, this roster is also a 4, probably slightly better than the Bengals because of the width of their talent as well as the depth. Now they don't have Joe Burrow, they just have Jared Goff, but the rest of the team is just Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be that dynamic runner that he wishes he had, right, with the Bengals. Amon-Ra St. Brown is not going to be covered one-on-one in the slot. Jameson Williams is going to be a huge time playmaker for Hat, probably putting up big numbers with him, right? Sam Laporta is going to create his big plays in his own right at tight end. Going to be making great plays as a superstar tight end, right? And then you have Ragnow. You're probably the best offensive line on the game. So he's going to run the ball over people. He's going to have great pass protection. Obviously, you have Penei Sewell. You have the tail end of Kevin Zeitler. This offense from a fit standpoint makes sense. It's a perfect fit for Hat. It's not like this quarterback who's like, is a Joe Burrow. I feel like having a super elite quarterback would almost hurt Hat because he'd feel the need to like just, lean into the quarterback and just pass the ball more than he should. Whereas like Goff is just good enough to where he'll be able to make a lot of these throws, but he won't like lean into the passing game so much that it takes away from his running ability because I really feel like he's a better runner than a passer. So he'll really lean into Gibbs. He'll set up play action. He'll allow Goff to do what he can do, but he won't do too much with Goff. He'll utilize these weapons, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, same Laporta. He'll let this offensive line take over games and dominate, and that fit just makes sense. Like, that's a perfect offensive fit. Defensively, it's not a perfect fit, but it is still a really good fit. Now, you're lacking on edge. You have Aiden Hutchinson, but other than that, you're not going to have anybody that's crazy. Once you kind of identify him and lock him down, nobody else is going to just dominate the offensive line from a pass rush perspective. From a defensive run perspective, you still have DJ Reader. You have Alan McNeil. You have guys that can stop the run, so I don't think they're going to get ran all over. Jack Campbell's a good linebacker. Derek Barnes has range. Alex Anzalone has range. So this defense, it's fine. I think if he can just, I think it's a good team. Like it's a good team. It's a really good fit. It's an excellent fit. But the defense needs work, and that's kind of the main reason why it's only a 4 out of 5 roster. It's the main reason why it's only a 4 out of 5 fit is because I don't think he's going to be able to like shut anyone down or anything. But he's definitely going to make it interesting, and that's the third team taken out of the NFC North. We obviously had first. We had the Bears at 17 already. We had Novocaine at 16, the Packers. We had Hat at 11 with the Lions. So I kind of almost rounding out the NFC North completely. And we have number 10 now, which is the San Francisco 49ers. Scruggs. I think this fit is both intriguing and a perfect fit. We're going to start on the defensive side with this one. Just defensively, you look and see what they have, right? They have Hufanga, who I think, with how Scruggs likes to run a lot of multiple defenses on the back end, cover 6, cover 3, cover 2. Hufanga can kind of do all those things and do all those things at a high level. He can also kind of come down into the box sometimes and make a lot of plays there, make a lot of splash plays with that. He's just 24 years old. He's pretty fast. Has enough range. I believe he's star, so he's in all likelihood he's going to become a superstar for him in the long term. Whether he can get him locked down contract wise, I'm unsure. But I think if he can maintain him on the roster, then he'll be good to go. And then at corner, Treverius Ward, Demondre Lenore, I believe his name is, and then a bunch of role players at corner after that. I think those corners will suit Scruggs' scheme well enough. Those aren't the best scheme fits, in terms of like contextually within the team. But all together, when they come together, it works out. And then the linebacking core is, in all likelihood, the best linebacking core in the game, the best linebacking core in the league. You have Dre Greenlaw, you have Fred Warner. Those guys are going to be, those fit most schemes, but they definitely fit Scruggs' scheme. He uses the linebacker a lot. That second level is key to lockdown. I think Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are just as good at anyone at doing that. You throw Devondre Campbell in there as a third linebacker, so if you go to base and for some reason you have 3 linebackers on the field at the same time, or you have an injury, Devondre Campbell can step in and provide serviceable linebacker play there, if not good linebacker play. So that's worth noting as well. You have Hargrave, who can stop the run, and then obviously your primary pass rusher is going to be Nick Bosa. Everyone else is kind of supplementary to him and his skill set and his ability. And you kind of want to work off of him and his double teams that he's going to draw and the disruption that he's going to cause. He's by far the best player in this defense. I think the defense is a very, very good fit, but that's not what makes this a 5 out of 5. It is the offense, so now we'll touch on the offense. Now, the one thing about the offense I will say is the offensive line definitely needs work, especially once Trent Williams retires. But other than that, the weapons are just pure insanity. Obviously, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, if he remains on the Niners roster before the start of Week 1, Deebo Samuel, Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, the rookie, Juszczyk, even the fullback. The first time and probably the only time we're going to mention a fullback. Christian McCaffrey is an absolute perfect fit. We talk about how Stacks and Josh Allen were virtually a perfect fit in terms of player to user hand in hand. Christian McCaffrey and Scruggs are probably even a level above that in terms of fit. The way he utilized and deployed Travis Etienne last year, it's going to be like that with Christian McCaffrey, probably amplified up to 10. If Etienne was at 8, McCaffrey's going to dial it a couple more times up to 10. He's going to be catching screens. He's going to be out as a receiver. He's going to be running the ball. He's going to be just getting the ball all over the field. He's going to be a workhorse for him. And of course, Elijah Mitchell and Matt Breida, as well as the young, pretty big running back, 6 foot 220, has 95 speed. Isaac Guerendo, I believe his name is, something of that nature. That's going to be someone to watch out for as well. So you got a lot of running backs there. And then, of course, it all starts and ends with Brock Purdy, who I think Scruggs will maximize and get the most out of. And all those reasons kind of, I think, lead to this team being a perfect 5 out of 5 fit for Scruggs. I think he'll be able to work in structure with Purdy. He'll be able to kind of build an offense around him where it can really succeed and score points and maximize all these weapons. And I think it's rare that you get a user who's as good as Scruggs is at running and passing, especially with utilizing one running back. And he gets a team like this because this is a team that has elite passing upside and elite running upside off of rip when you start off, when you kick off. And he has the ability to tap into both of those. And there's probably only a handful of users in the league you can say that about. And then even defensively, I think he's going to probably get the most out of those guys as well. So it's a really interesting fit. And that does round out the NFC West now that I believe has GKRC with the Seahawks, obviously. It has Scruggs with the 49ers. It has Eric, again, reprising his role as the Rams. And it has the Cardinals, who Pep took, actually, at 19. So that rounds out the division. And this is what I was kind of talking about earlier, where a lot of these divisions are structured with a clear alpha. Well, this is one of those. The NFC West is structured with a clear alpha user. Last year, Scruggs kind of worked and played in the shadow of Beige in the AFC South when Beige was the Colts. He was the Jaguars. He kind of operated in the shadows, never won the division, only beat Beige a couple times in 6-7 seasons. Well, now he gets his own division. Now he's the alpha. Now he has a really great team. And we're going to really get to see what he can do and get an idea of what he can do this year. No excuses. Just need to get results this year. And I think he's got the team to do it. So watch out for him. He might even be, really looking to not only get his first playoff win, but his first Lombardi trophy this year. Could be really dangerous. So moving inside to the top 10 to number 9 now. We have the Washington Commanders, and that would be Mike taking his claimed to fame favorite team. Now, this team is the last team that's going to be rated so low, a 2 out of 5, because the roster really isn't that good. Now, obviously, you have Jaden Daniels, who's going to be a franchise quarterback. Can have the upside of a guy like Lamar Jackson, but in and of himself, that's not enough to just like make the roster good. Now, it gets it from a 1 to a 2 because without Jaden Daniels, it's a 1 roster, but it's a 2 with him. And I just don't think the fit is that good either. I don't think that they are a team that can just work to Mike's strengths specifically. Luckily, his user 7 out of 10, as we have rated there, is able to kind of elevate it up to a playoff level threat, and I think that's pretty apt. I mean, it's hard. It's going to be hard to elevate this roster. I think if Mike does struggle anywhere, it's probably as a general manager. He makes a lot of questionable moves. Now, he did build up that Cowboys team a couple years ago in Madden 23, and that's probably his best job he's done as a GM. But other than that, he makes a lot of moves that kind of they give different visions of what you want the team to be. Like, he'll make a move for a running back, and then he'll go get him, where you want to build a running team, a tough physical team, and then he'll also draft 3 receivers, and it's like, well, do you want to run the ball or do you want to throw the ball? I get it's cool to always improve your team, and that maybe wasn't the best way to articulate what I'm speaking about, but he makes a lot of moves that are more for box office and less about improving your team and making them better. And I think that's kind of it's a valid point to bring up when you're talking about having to rebuild a team like the Commanders, who have a lot of holes. But, I mean, obviously Jaden Daniels is your franchise quarterback. That's going to be the guy you roll with the whole way. You got to live or die on Jaden Daniels. So, I mean, that's just what you got to do. At running back, you have the corpse of Austin Eckler, who for some reason is still a superstar, and is going to give you some production, at least for a little bit, if he wants to start him. He's the fastest running back. You also have Brian Robinson, who can kind of be your power back. So however you want to run that running back room, you can do it. I don't think any of that is a good fit. The running back room is a good fit with Mike and how he plays, but maybe it'll work out for him. They already lost Jahan Dotson. Obviously, he's on the Eagles now. He got traded in real life, so by the week 1 rosters, he'll be off the roster. But obviously, you still have Scary Terry, you have Terry McLaurin, and you have a bunch of guys. You do have Luke McCaffrey, who probably will play in Madden. I don't really believe in him in real life, to be completely honest. But in Madden, he's pretty good. He's a bigger receiver. He is normal, so you're gonna have to develop him. But he'll probably be your number 2 behind Terry McLaurin. So good for him, I guess. At tight end, you have the corpse of Zach Ertz, and you have Ben Sinnott is probably the guy that's actually gonna play. I believe he has star development. He's going to be a solid tight end, young tight end, probably the safety blanket. If Terry McLaurin's getting doubled a lot, which he probably will, Ben Sinnott will probably be the safety blanket a lot of times for Jade McDaniels. So, and then you go to the offensive line. You got a young offensive line. You got Brandon Coleman, who's 23. You got Samuel Cosme, who's 25. You have Ricky Stromberg, who's 23. So you have 3 kind of young offensive line pieces. Other than that, it's kind of just a bunch of turnstiles, honestly. Other than Andrew Wiley, who's coming from Kansas City in real life. He'll be all right for you, but everyone else is just kind of there. They're not going to do much. They're going to be in your way. They're going to hindered the offense from success, honestly. So you're going to kind of have to build off those 3 core younger guys and just hope you can build up that offensive line. But all in all, you really are just working with Jaden McDaniels, an aging Terry McLaurin, Luke McCaffrey, the rookie tight end, and 3 kind of young offensive line pieces. Defensively, you obviously do have Jonathan Allen, you have Deron Payne, so you have a good interior there. You have Jerzon Newton as well, interior guy. So you have a good core in the middle. Now outside you have like Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong, so really don't have a number 1 or even number 2 caliber edge, honestly. You just kind of have a bunch of role players at edge. So the pass rush is going to be struggling if you don't get anything up the middle for a while there, because obviously last year in real life they traded away Chase Young, they traded away Montez Sweat, so they kind of have to rebuild that edge room. So that'll be up to Mike to be able to do that. In terms of off ball, well, I guess it is also worth mentioning that Frank Louvi's on the team. He probably is the best edge guy. He probably is a number 2, but he's still not, he's not great. So, but you also have Bobby Wagner. I mean, he's kind of old too. So this team has a lot of old veteran players that know how to win. Whether that translates to helping Mike develop a lot of these young guys, we'll see. At corner, you have Emmanuel Forbes Jr. That's your coveted piece. On the defensive side of the ball, probably Emmanuel Forbes, other than Deron Payne, of course, is Emmanuel Forbes Jr. You have Mike Sain Ristel. So that's kind of you have kind of some young corners to work from. I think Emmanuel Forbes Jr. will work well with Mike and is a big reason probably why, like I said, roster and assets is from a 1 to a 2. He and a couple other players, along with Jaden Daniels, excuse me. I think it's a couple times, so that's my fault. Are the reason why this team is elevated from a 1 roster to a 2 roster. But I mean, all in all, it's just going to be tough for Mike to elevate this team from a general manager standpoint. I have no doubt about his user ability, but he's going to have to make moves in the front office to really be able to have success with this team long term. And because I don't really believe in that fully, that's why I have him as a playoff level threat. And that's kind of the main hole in his game, from a team building perspective. So, but moving on to number 8, we have the Baltimore Ravens. This may be a surprise to some people. It may not be a surprise, but Peoples will reprise his role as the Baltimore Ravens, not from last year, but I believe from the year prior. And this is arguably the best roster on the game. This roster is pretty loaded. But he does take on the Lamar Jackson curse, where Lamar Jackson has only won a pair of Super Bowls in the first year and has failed to win a Super Bowl after that. So we'll see if he can break that curse or if it will continue to plague him as it has plagued users in the past, myself included. But we'll start with Lamar Jackson, and obviously he's dynamic. He's the best dual-threat quarterback in the game, both in real life and in Madden. He's going to be virtually indefensible in this Madden, the way the gameplay is set up, if you utilized and deployed properly. I don't know if he will do that. Usually Peoples is kind of just like a pocket passer, and I think having a guy like Lamar kind of hurts the fit a little bit weirdly, even though Lamar Jackson's an asset. I feel like his play style and his natural inclination on how you should play, probably quote unquote should play with Lamar Jackson, doesn't really fit with the way Peoples likes to play, because although he does improvise and buy time and play they say there's 2 different types of quarterbacks. There's surgeons and there's artists. Peoples has a little bit of artist tendency. He is definitely more of a surgeon, and Lamar is definitely more of an artist quarterback. So I think that fit is a little iffy, but it'll be fine because they're both good enough to where it won't make that big of a difference. At running back, obviously you have Derrick Henry, hopefully at the tail end of his prime still. Hopefully he has a little bit of gas left in the tank. He's kind of like the thunder to Lamar, his lightning. And then also you have Keaton Mitchell, who's also worth mentioning, who's also the lightning. So you have, a really good, maybe the best running back room from a Madden standpoint, because you have a young guy who's fast, you have an old guy who has power, you have Lamar Jackson, so that run game should be, on paper, just from those guys, should be borderline unstoppable if he sticks with it. Now the problem is Peoples isn't a high volume runner traditionally, so I don't know if he'll lean into that and that again kind of hurts the fit and why it's only a 4 and out of 5 because the roster is good enough to where it should be a 5, and the defense is absolutely makes sense with people's skill set to be a 5, but the offense and their strengths don't really fully add up to be a 5. Ricard's worth mentioning, second fullback we mentioned. He's a great blocker. That's kind of all there is to say about him. At receiver, you have Zay Flowers. He can separate. He can create big plays down the field. That's your clear number 1. You obviously have Rashad Bateman, who can still be developed at even at 24 and at this point in his career. You have Devontae Walker, who's a rookie at North Carolina. If he makes the team in real life, then you'll be able to kind of deploy him as a fast guy. So whether he wants to try to develop Bateman, further develop Zay, develop Walker, that'll be up to him. There's options there, but you also really don't have to with this team, honestly. Like, you can work with mediocre to bad receivers and still have success. At tight end, you obviously have Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews, and we mentioned earlier about Buffalo, stacks with Buffalo, and I believe it was the Raiders, which was I don't really recall off the top of my head. But both of them have, pairs of tight ends that you should want to run a lot of 12 personnel with them. Well, the Ravens are kind of the same thing, right? If you're not trying to develop these receivers, then you should run a lot of 12 personnel because you can run the ball. These two tight ends are really talented. Obviously, Mark Andrews is a superstar. It really helps your team overall. And then offensive line, for some reason, still has Stanley as a superstar, even though he's been kind of putrid in real life the last couple of years. They have Linderbaum. And then they have the rookie Rosengarten. But other than that, you kind of have to reconstruct this offensive line sneakily a little bit too. It isn't great. It isn't terrible either because it has enough pieces to where it'll be good. But we're going to start on the defensive side now, and we have Matabike, obviously, who's going to disrupt and create a lot of havoc on the defensive side of the ball. I think this Ravens defense is very multiple and very versatile and very hybrid in a lot of ways in their own right, and in that meshes well with Peoples and what he likes to do. He likes to run a lot of multiple fronts and a lot of he gives you a lot of different looks. He doesn't usually stay a lot in one thing. He gives some zone blitzes. He'll give some man blitzes. He'll mix it up a lot. So this defense is very, very good fit with what he likes to do. Matabike is a good part of that. Able to stop the run, able to rush the passer from the inside. You can always put him on the outside, and he can stop the run there as well. You got Michael Pierce in the middle. Edge is kind of where this has a big question mark. You do have Owe. You still have Ojabo if they both make the team, which they probably will in real life. You have Dissa Isaac. All those guys will probably make the team in real life, so it'll probably be good. You have Kyle Van Noy. So the edge is kind of the big question mark, but because he's so multiple and he doesn't really rely on pass rush in and of itself, he can kind of manufacture some pass rush. I don't think that's a major concern or really a concern at all for him, to be completely honest, especially with the advantages the rest of this defense provides. The linebacking core is one of those things with, in my opinion, the best linebacker in football and probably the biggest asset to have in this game, maybe aside from Fred Warner at the linebacker position. Roquan Smith is a stud. He's going to be all over the field. He's going to play for you and make constant plays in the middle of the field. Him and Trenton Simpson's like a perfect match. Now, whether you want to transition and try to develop Trenton Simpson at edge isn't a bad move in Madden. I think that's a fine move. But either way, whatever you want to do, I don't think this is a wrong move that you could do. So that's a good duo to have at linebacker. At corner, you obviously have a tremendous amount of talent and depth. You have Marlon Humphrey, obviously, as the penciled-in number one. You have Brandon Stevens, who had a tremendous year last year in real life. You have the rookie Nate Wiggins, who's probably going to be your franchise number one corner, who's a stud corner to have. He's probably not going to move, I can't imagine, from this team. And then you have a bunch of role guys, but guys that can fill in their role nonetheless. Jalen Armour-Davis is probably the main guy to watch out of that bunch as the fourth corner. But a good corner trio to kind of, and then trickles down to a fine depth group as well. And then at safety, you got Marcus Williams, and you have, in my opinion, the best safety in the league, probably the most valuable safety to have in the game, Kyle Hamilton. Huge asset. He's going to be flying over the field. He's going to be making plays, disrupting. Just a huge asset to have on your defense. you bring him down into the box. You can drop him deep. You can man him up on a tight end. He's an absolute asset to have. And then having Eddie Jackson as a third safety is a luxury, regardless of age. Still at 90 speed. He's a heady veteran. He's going to make smart plays. He's going to jump passes that other safeties wouldn't be able to jump. So really good third safety to have. And obviously, the only time we're going to mention a kicker probably is Justin Tucker. I'm sure there's other superstar kickers in the game, but this one's very noteworthy because he has 99 kick power, 97 kick accuracy. He's a threat to make it from anywhere. So good luck with that. That'll probably basically cross midfield. You're on the board with the Ravens, so that's a really tough team to deal with. And that rounds out the AFC North. I think that'll be one of the more competitive divisions in the entire league. I think it'll be a 3-horse race every year. I think Twan's kind of on the outside looking in, unfortunately for him. I don't think he's on the same skill level as the other three guys. I think they're all at comparable skill levels enough to where it's really going to be down to the wire every year. I think Peoples, I think Xavier, and I think Key are going to be vying for that division every year. Now, this is going to be a big year to kind of differentiate one of them from the rest of the pack, right? Because they're all kind of seen as equal level users to a degree. Maybe there's a little bit of a difference in discrepancy here and there, but they're all pretty equal on an equal footing. So if one of them is able to just go through and win the majority of the division the majority of the time and beat up on the rest of them, then that'll kind of separate him from the pack. But I foresee it being kind of a split division here. I think it's going to, they're going to win their own fair share of the pie here, and then Twan's kind of going to be left trying to make the playoffs as wild card, but I don't see him making the playoffs by winning this division. Just too tough. But, moving into the top 8 now, we have number 7. We have the Falcons. We have KC. Still remains a contender. And, again, we talked about how, the divisions are kind of constructed to where a lot of divisions have a clear alpha. Obviously, the AFC North is different, but we already talked about the NFC West with Scruggs, how that kind of has a clear, defined, likely favorite or alpha of the division. Well, the NFC South is the same way, right? KC obviously is going to be the favorite within this division. You have, you have Killing with the Panthers. You have Avery with the Buccaneers. You have Cuzzo with the Saints. I think those are all multiple cuts below what we've seen Casey capable of. Right? He can construct a team. He's an elite team builder. He's going to be able to build the team up. He's going to be able to, get his team to be able to play defense, get his team to be able to run the ball, play smart, take the points. He's the clear alpha in this division, and maybe even could be a legit Super Bowl contender, because of the way this team is constructed and getting into the team. You do have Kirk Cousins technically as the quarterback. Now, I doubt he's going to go with him because, it doesn't make a lot of sense from him. He's not a physically gifted quarterback. He doesn't have ability, so I don't foresee that. Probably going to go with Michael Penix. Now, he's also not known as somebody who develops quarterbacks, so it wouldn't be shocking if he stuck with Kirk Cousins either, honestly. Either way, it's not surprising. Whatever he wants to do with that quarterback room, he's not really going to go wrong because that's not going to be the focal point of this offense anyways. The focal point is going to be Bijan Robinson. He's going to be there without a doubt for the duration of the franchise. He's going to dominate. He's going to create big plays in the passing game, in the run game. He's going to be his offense and the focal point of the offense, and people are going to kind of key in on him, try to stop Bijan Robinson. That's kind of going to be the game plan defensively every week going against KC. That's what I foresee, at least. And then you have Tyler Algier as kind of depth. I don't foresee him really doing very much, touching the ball very much, other than spelling Bijan Robinson in the first year. Because of the lack of speed. I know KC values that, especially at the running back position. So that's kind of how that goes. In terms of receiver room, I think Drake London will be kind of an underrated, sneaky, good receiver to make some good possession catches for Casey here and there. He may try to move him, though. I don't know if he's going to try to necessarily keep him because I know he just wants guys to take the top off. That's his ideal thing. He wants to be able to set up the run, set up play action, take the top off. Now, Rondell Moore can do that, and that he does have him. Darnell Mooney's also pretty capable of that. He has him. So maybe he tries to move Drake London, but I also think it's possible he carves himself out possession role, a guy who can move the chains on 3rd and 6, on 3rd and 5, and make those tough catches in traffic too. So either way, I wouldn't be surprised. And yeah, we do have this roster rated as a 3 out of 5, um, because they have a lot of assets, but they also have a lot of holes, as you'll see here. But the fit is pretty good, as you can see. 4 out of 5, excellent fit. Um, Obviously, you have Kyle Pitts. Well, when people stop the box and stack the box, and they want to commit to stopping Bijan Robinson, this is going to be the main guy that when you're leaving your guys one-on-one out there with the receiver and the tight end, Kyle Pitts is going to make you pay, right? Because you're not going to be able to allocate resources to stopping him, double him, and stop Bijan. So that's kind of the 1-2 punch, ideally, that I imagine anyone would envision, but especially Casey, with the way he wants to run this team, is going to want to envision this offense, right? Is you force people to stop Bijan Robinson. When they try to take him away, you hit him over the top with Kyle Pitts, who just makes tremendous plays at tight end. And he has, the sky is the limit with him at tight end. The offensive line is actually pretty serviceable, surprisingly. You have Jake Matthews at the tail end of his career at left tackle. He'll hold down the fort for you until you can kind of find a replacement, hopefully. Chris Lindstrom's an absolute stud at guard, superstar. Majority of the franchise will be dominant for you or there if he wants to keep him. Now, I know Casey doesn't usually value offensive linemen very much anyways, so he may just move them and get assets for him. But, I mean, that's still worth mentioning in terms of – because other people are going to value him, and you're going to get value out of a superstar lineman. So that's worth mentioning still. And then you got Caleb McGarry, who's in a similar boat as Jake Matthews, but a little younger, so you'll get a little bit more out of him, a little less tread on the tires there. And then you kind of got to figure out left guard and center, whether you want to keep Matthew Bergeron at guard and Drew Dalman at center, or if you want to just kind of try to get some better pieces. I don't foresee Casey really investing a lot of assets in the offensive line, though, because, like I said, he doesn't traditionally value them. So he probably will either move these great guys that he already has, keep the guys who are kind of fine, and work with what he has there. Although I think if he did invest in the offensive line, it would make his run game all the more fearsome. But that's neither here nor there. Going on to the defense, you have Ruke Ororo is kind of the main edge guy you have. 75 overall. I believe he has star development. That's kind of your main edge guy you have. Obviously, they acquired Judon. They have Grady Jarrett and Onyemata on the inside. Judon will be like your alpha until hopefully Ororo comes along and becomes your alpha. You also have Braylon Trice. He's worth mentioning. Lorenzo Carter's on this roster, but he's kind of older now. Troy Anderson's still just 25 with high speed. He'll be rangy for him. The corners are kind of A.J. Terrell and everybody else. He's not going to be able to just run stock man the first year, even though I know he likes doing that. With the Falcons, you just can't do that the first year. I mean, you're going to have A.J. Terrell being able to do it, but you can't have many else. So he's going to have to really develop his corner room. Now, whether he wants to try to develop Clark Phillips III, I don't know. He doesn't have high speed. He can play slot, though. So, I mean, if you want to play slot, put him in the slot and develop him from there. That's possible. He could also play safety. But the safety room is already stacked because this is probably the best safety in the room in the league. And this is probably the main reason. This, along with Bijan and Kyle Pitts, is probably the biggest reason this is such an excellent fit to me, is because, he really lets these safeties usually range a little bit when he does run these man coverages. The guys who are usually loose are either one of the edge guys, usually drop into coverage. So that's why it's so important for him to have versatile and multiple edge guys. And he drops these safeties into different spots, whether it be a curl zone, whether it be a cloud zone, whether it be a deep zone. Having Jesse Bates, having Justin Simmons, both on the roster, who are both superstar or X-Factor safeties, who are both instinctive and can make excellent plays on the back end. I think that's a huge asset for his defense. It's going to create a lot of turnovers. It's going to create a lot of big plays I foresee early on. I don't see a world where he doesn't have them both on the field almost all the time because of this roster doesn't have like a lot of young, fast players in the back end. So it makes sense to keep those two back there at all times. So, I mean, that's what I foresee from a safety standpoint. And again, like I said, this kind of caps out the NFC South and shows that, this is the clear alpha for the NFC South is Casey with the Falcons. Then we move on to number 6. The Miami Dolphins, Smoke, who also is going to be categorized as a contender. He comes in as the highest user rank thus far with 8 out of 10. The team finishes 3, but the roster is a 4. So coming in at 15 out of 20. There has been no dynasties yet, and we're yet to get into the top 5. So the Miami Dolphins is a really interesting team for Smoke. It kind of surprised me a little bit because it honestly doesn't fit him very well on paper. They have pieces that make sense, but we'll break it down here. Quarterback Tua, it makes sense, right? That makes sense to me because Tua plays to the strengths a lot of what Smoke likes to do. Short, quick passing game, hit you over the top. Now, like, Tua doesn't have really the arm to constantly just strike over the top, but at the same time, you have the receivers to compensate for that, just like the Dolphins do in real life. So it's not really a big deal as long as you maintain this receiving core. But the short, quick part of his passing game, the part of his passing game that likes to move the ball and just move the chains, he'll be fine with Tua there. That makes sense for how Smoke likes to play. He's not the best quarterback, but he is a very good quarterback for Madden Superstar Development. Still 26, 88 overall, so he'll be more than okay, more than a fine franchise quarterback for Smoke there. Makes sense. That part makes sense. The running back makes sense. A-Chain. You also have Mostert to spell him. And then you even have Jalen Wright, the rookie. So, like, all those, I know Smoke likes to have a lot of really good running backs. So that part, again, makes sense. That's why this is a 3 fit and not 2 fit or anything like that. This is, if anything, it'd be like a 3.5 out of 5 fit. It's a good fit. Like, it's just, there's some questions. Like, there's better fits, in my opinion, that were on the board when he was drafting. That's all. So the running back room has a lot of upside, a lot of burst. That's probably going to create a lot of big plays for him. At receiver, you obviously have Tyreek Hill. You have Jalen Waddle. Those are the obvious ones. You have Odell, I guess, as like a, serviceable backup. You have Anthony Schwartz. So, like, you just have an insane speed at receiver here. Like, I mean, he's going to be able to get quick strikes, whether it be small completions with a rack or whether it be, deep passes, deep completions down the field. Either way you want to cut it, this is going to be probably an offense that generates a ton of big plays, and then he's going to probably, be able to strike very quickly and allow his defense to get some turnovers. And, I mean, that's going to be a winning formula. It just isn't the formula we're accustomed to seeing with Smoke. And we'll see how far he can get with that, considering it's not traditional for him. He likes to play a lot more, usually, like, a game that's a little slower, not a little slower paced. And allow his defense to kind of control the game, control the tempo, the attitude of the game. But now it's going to kind of be led by his offense, probably. On the offensive line, Terran Armstead, still a stud at the end of his prime here. Pretty injury-prone in real life, but he'll probably be fine in Madden. Patrick Pearl, the rookie tackle, is kind of going to be his replacement, who should be more than capable of taking up the mantle when Armstead does hang it up. Isaiah Wynn's a serviceable guard. And then other than that, you kind of just, you have guys on the offensive line. You're going to have to build that up. Like we've said about plenty of other offensive lines to this point, I think it'll be fine because he has such fast receivers that are going to create separation so quickly that it's not going to be as big of a factor. So I think he's going to be fine there. Shifting over to defense, you have some serviceable guys on the line. You have Zach Zeeler. You have Calais Campbell, some old veterans, guys that are not going to be crazy, but are going to be fine until he can find permanent replacements. But the guys you really want to talk about are the Jalen Phillipses of the world, the Chop Robinsons of the world, these fast, athletic linebackers that can drop into coverage, that can blitz, that are going to be great pieces for Smoke and really interesting to watch. Those are the most exciting parts of this defense, other than, of course, Jalen Ramsey. But, Jalen Phillips and Chop Robinson are going to be really fun to watch to see how Smoke deploys them. He also, of course, still has Channing Tindall, who's extremely fast and worth mentioning for the way he wants to run this offense. And then, of course, like we mentioned, Jalen Ramsey is kind of the stud of this defense. The one thing that's going to give you confidence that this will be a good defense for Smoke. It's not going to be great, I don't think, off the bat, but it's going to be very good. But other than that, from the secondary perspective, like you have Javon Holland, who is really good, and you have Jordan Poyer's kind of at the tail end of his prime making smart plays, as well as Marcus May as third safety. You still have Kendall Fuller as well. So, like, the secondary is far from bad. It's nothing to scoff at. It's just not a lot of young pieces to kind of build around. Maybe Cam Smith at corner. Definitely a lot of question marks on the defensive side of the ball, but also a lot of exciting pieces. A lot of exciting individual pieces. We're going to see how this defense kind of all comes together. I have confidence in Smoke to bring it together. He kind of drafted in a way that's very unique. He drafted a team that is strong where he's weak and weak where he is strong, which is a very interesting way to go about it. I think it's smart. I don't think it's a bad move. It's just unorthodox, and because it's uncommon and unorthodox, and we haven't really seen it from Smoke specifically to this point, I gave it a 3 out of 5 team fit, which is kind of dead center. So that's kind of where we land, and that doesn't quite cap out the AFC East because we still have the Jets on the board. We have the Bills gone. Stacks took them. We have the Patriots gone. That was the last team taken. SLWJR was stuck with the Patriots, and Smoke now takes the Dolphins at 6. So this division will be kind of interesting with 2 users in the top 6. We'll see who the last user is when we get into this top 5 now. So number 5 would be the Houston Texans, and that's Trells, and another contender moniker given to another user here. We have obviously another division where, like we said with the NFC West, like we said with the NFC South, an obvious alpha user. So that's a third division now where there's like, okay, well, you have Scruggs in the NFC West, who's clearly on paper a cut above the rest. Okay, well, we have Casey in the NFC South, who's clearly a cut above the rest, and now we have Trells in Houston with the Texans, who is a cut above the rest. It's really interesting how things worked out that way, and we have this clear favorite for almost half the league at this point, and by the time we wrap this up, it might be half the league where we have a clear favorite in multiple divisions, and the Texans absolutely qualify with Trells. I think this team kind of is sneaky perfect for how it fits with Trells. Like, it's not quite perfect, which is why I have it at a 4, but it is very good, right? So you have Stroud obviously to start. It makes a lot of sense. Stroud's strengths as a quarterback match Trell's strengths as a quarterback. And that's going to be a match made in heaven. They're going to make a lot of big plays. They're going to create a lot of offense. I think that's a really great, effective combination. I think Stroud is going to be able to do everything that Trells is going to ask him to do. He doesn't have the best arm, but all these deep passes that Trells likes to draw up, Stroud is going to have the accuracy. He's going to have enough arm to get it there. I think it's going to work really well. I think all the passes are available to him, and I think that'll be really interesting. Now, with running back, it's very open-ended. Does he go Joe Mixon because he's still the best running back in the room, even though he's old? Does he go young Dameon Pierce, even though he's not super fast, but he is very powerful and has a high potential? Does he go Cam Akers because he's probably the guy with the most burst, with the highest acceleration? It could be an open competition. I don't know. I'm gonna guess Dameon Pierce makes the most sense from a development standpoint, but I also don't think the run is going to be the focal point of this offense at all. So I don't think it matters very much, honestly. I think it's just like it's going to be a passing team. The run's going to be secondary. And because Trells like to operate primarily out of the shotgun, and the run is usually pretty secondary anyways, and it's a lot of shotgun running, I think Mixon makes the most sense schematically. And regardless of what he does, it'll probably work because Stroud's going to be launching passes. People are not going to be sitting in the box, and they're going to be worrying about these receivers who, by the way, involve Stephon Diggs, involve Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs both have superstar and or X factor. Tank Dell has all the potential to reach that. So what a trio. Talk about the Bears trio. Well, this trio is, or at least could be, as good, or even better, with Trells at the helm developing them. It could be very interesting to see how that turns out, right? So keep your eye on that. I think all those receivers will be deployed and maximized, and it should be really fun to watch all of them for sure. Now, one thing he doesn't really have is somebody that's a definitive speed demon. So watch for him to either draft one in the first draft, make a move for one in the first year, make a move for one in the offseason. He's going to get somebody who can take the top off, I think, for sure. So watch for that. But right now he doesn't have that. So I imagine he's going to expect a lot more single safety looks in the first season, until he gets somebody who can really just threaten deep. At tight end, no one's really developed yet in any SOB, Brevin Jordan, but I see Trells doing it this year. I think Brevin Jordan's going to have an excellent SOB under Trells. I think he's going to develop him very well. I think you got to look out for Brevin Jordan breakout year for in SOB. Dalton Schultz, I wouldn't even worry about him. I don't think he's going to start. Former Cowboy, Trells might cut him. I mean, he has the penalties too much, I'm pretty sure. But if the penalty wasn't too much, Trells very well might cut him. He doesn't want a former Cowboy on his team, especially one that's not going to help him. But anything be like a possession tight end who can block fine. Like, I think Brevin Jordan's going to get on the field hot, much more upside, younger, cheaper for right now, so it makes sense. Laramie Tunzel is the main guy you want to mention in the offensive line. Stud tackle, franchise tackle, superstar tackle, all praise you have, all the compliments you have for an offensive lineman, they go to Laramie Tunzel. He's going to lock down that edge for Trells. And then on the other side, you have Blake Fisher, who's a young guy at Notre Dame. I believe he does have star. I could be mistaken, though. And that's another guy who probably will, at the very least, take over for Laramie when he retires, but it will probably be a good tackle from day one as well. And then you transition to this defense, and this is where my questions kind of come in. The Texans offense kind of fits Trells almost to a T, especially schematically. Defensively, there's some question marks, right? You got Will Anderson, okay, that makes sense. Daniil Hunter, obviously, that makes sense. These guys are going to wreak havoc. Derek Barnett's kind of that third guy on a rotation from the edge. Those guys are all going to come together. They're going to create a pass rush from the edge. That makes sense. Inside, there's not much of a rush. Now, he's used to having Jalen Carter. He's used to having Fletcher Cox when he was in his prime. He's used to having all these interior defensive linemen that create all these plays from the inside. He's not going to have that with the Texans, not off the rip, right? Also, Jordan Davis making plays for him last year. But that's not something he can really expect this year with the Texans off the rip. So that's something to look out for. And then you look at the linebackers, right? You have Henry 2-0, I think, from Alabama, who has high upside with speed and acceleration. Watch out for him to develop him as an off-ball linebacker. Other than that, you have Christian Harris, also probably going to be the main guy he develops, who's an off-ball linebacker. So you have speed at linebacker. Trells definitely covets that, probably just as much as any position in terms of speed. So that's definitely something to look out for. But those guys need to be developed, and they're not going to make smart plays on their own. So kind of what you're watching out for to this point on defense is, right, interior rush is not going to be there in year one. Off-ball linebackers are not going to make smart plays because they're younger players. They're not developed. Their play recognition, their zone coverage isn't going to be higher. So you can probably take advantage of a lot of those guys in the second level. Trells is probably going to be usering one of them, but he can't use both of them. So that's kind of where my question marks are so far on the defensive side of the ball. At corner, you have a bona fide number one, legit number one, Derek Stingley Jr. That makes more than enough sense to me, especially the way Trells likes to run. I mean, he can run anything. Stingley can run man, he can run zone, but Trells likes to run a lot of single safety, single high safety, whether it be cover one, whether it be cover three, whatever. Stingley's going to hold his own on his side, and that's all he really needs to do. Akuda can also be fine for that, too, for year one. Whether Trells wants to put Kamari Lassiter in there as low speed as he has or not, I don't know. C.J. Henderson, I don't know. Like, he's going to have to just figure it out with those corners. He has Stingley, and then he has a bunch of guys who have all their own question marks and flaws. So that's another question mark with the defense. And then at safety, you have a lot of guys like that. This might be the most important position for Trells defense, which is the guy who's playing center field safety, right? Like, a lot of people like to run some center field safety, but Trells really loves to run center field safety, where there's one guy, that Earl Thomas role, that Ed Reed role, that runs the center field. So it's going to be really important to figure out. He has to identify which guy he wants to man his center field and which guy he wants to develop. Now, the guy that makes the most sense on paper is probably Kalen Bullock, because he's only 21. He has virtually the same range as Jalen Petrie, the guy who's the starter or listed as the starter now, and he's just a rookie. Kalen Bullock is everything kind of you would want in a center fielder. He also has at least, I think, star, I believe. So that makes the most sense. That's who I'm guessing he's going to throw back there. But he could mix it up, and he could put Stingley back there for all I know. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's possible. It's on the board that could happen. So just look out for that. That's going to be the most important part of the defense. But just a lot of little holes in the defense. It's not bad or anything, but a lot of question marks, and those question marks kind of are the main reason why it's a 4 out of 5 and not quite a 5 out of 5. But he still gets the contender moniker. He's just 1 point off of the dynasty moniker, and no one has received that yet. So it's not like he's in the minority and not receiving it, but still see him as a threat every year. And like I said, see him as an alpha, one of the few alphas that we've had listed thus far. You have Scruggs in the NFC West with the Niners over there west. You have the NFC South, Casey down south with the Falcons, and you now have Trells down in the south in Houston with the Texans, who are kind of the alphas of their own divisions respectively. The AFC North's all been revealed. That's kind of a toss-up up in the air. The AFC East still has the Jets to kind of go. The AFC West still has the Chiefs to kind of go. The NFC North, we're still waiting for the Vikings. So, we'll get into this Final Four here to kind of reveal the last few questions that we have. And here we go. Here's the Kansas City Chiefs. I have it as the Cincinnati Bengals. It's supposed to be the Kansas City Chiefs. I must just be thinking because TJ was the Bengals last year, so I must have just mindlessly put him in as the Cincinnati Bengals. So that's my mistake. But it is supposed to say the Kansas City Chiefs. And it is the first user that's listed as a dynasty thus far. And, I mean, I don't think I really have to give too much exposition as to why it's a dynasty. The only exposition that I probably have to give that doesn't make sense is why the team fit is not a 5 out of 5. And I'll explain that to you in a second. But the roster's a 5. The only two rosters that I gave 5s for rosters and assets are the Chiefs and the Ravens. So because their assets are so vast and their roster is so vast and they have enough youth, they have enough mixture of youth and elite talent to be able to be listed as 5s. But, it all starts with Patrick Mahomes, obviously. TJ is going to put up insane numbers with him. We're talking 60, 70 touchdowns with him every year. Look out for him to just destroy people with Patrick Mahomes. I don't think you have to get into a lot of analysis to know that he's going to throw a lot of touchdowns. He's probably going to throw a fair amount of picks, but he's going to throw a lot more touchdowns than he's going to throw picks. Running back Pacheco is the ideal running back for TJ. He has enough speed, but he also has power. He has burst. He's a superstar. He's young. He can catch the ball. He's a perfect running back for TJ. I mean, that's all there is to be said. Like, that's the guy you would want right there, Pacheco. And then he has speed. At receiver, he's got Hardman. He's got Hollywood Brown. He's got Xavier Worthy. You have Kadarius Toney if you can throw him back there at returner still. Maybe as a fourth receiver. You have Rashee Rice, who can be your slot guy. You have so many different weapons here at receiver with Kansas City. So you just have so many different things that you're going to be able to do, so many tools in your tool belt with Patrick Mahomes to throw to. And then, of course, you still have Travis Kelce at the tail end of his prime. You also have rookie Jared Wiley, who I'm guessing is probably going to get the start over Kelce in year one of SOB because, he wants to develop him. I don't know if he wants to maybe just focus on Worthy and then leave Kelce out there as kind of a decoy, like people have to key in on Kelce so that way Worthy gets more open, or if he wants to give Wiley more snaps and just feed Wiley and Worthy, but it'll be harder to get people open a little bit more because you don't have Kelce on the field taking away, defensive attention. But maybe you put Kelce in the slot. I don't know. I don't want to give him ideas or anything, but like there's a lot you can do with this Chiefs offense. Whatever the best way is to create big plays, I'm sure TJ's going to figure it out. He's going to create big plays for his offense. On the offensive line, you have Kingsley Sumatea at tackle, a young, great tackle. This offensive line is probably one of the best in the league. You really don't have to do much to make it great because it's already pretty much there. You got Joe Tooney, you got Creed Humphrey, you got Trey Smith. Probably the best, definitely the best interior line in the league, and maybe the best overall line in the league. And then, of course, Jawan Taylor kind of finishing out the offensive line. He's fine. He's probably the weak link, but having a 73 overall fine player as your weak link is fine. So the offense, if it was just the offense, it's a 5 out of 5 fit. I mean, for most passers, but especially TJ, who's going to create a lot of big plays. So that speaks for itself. But the defense is kind of where a couple question marks come up, right? From the defensive line standpoint, you have George Karlaftis, who I believe was a stud for Smoke last year, and I think was a stud for TJ 2 years ago. I believe if he had the Chiefs 2 years ago, I don't remember if he had. I think he had them. Yeah, I think he had the Chiefs in Madden 23 in the franchise that was cut short 3 seasons. He had George Karlaftis when he was a rookie, really making splash plays, making big plays for him. So he's probably going to try to repeat that. Other than now, the defensive line, you have Chris Jones to worry about, obviously, until he gets old and retires. You still have Leo Chanel as well, who is not really a pass rusher. I guess he could be developed to be one, but you'd have to commit to that. I think he's more of an off-ball guy. You got Leo Chanel, you got Nick Bolton, you got Drew Tranquil. So the front seven's set. Like, we really only have one definitive edge guy, and he's going to have to develop that one edge guy. But here's where the questions come in, right? You have Trent McDuffie, and then you have a bunch of question marks. So all that man blitzing, all that tight man coverage, that aggressive defense that TJ wants to run to create turnovers, like, this defense doesn't really fit that. This defense can run man blitzes, but they don't have corners that can just go man to man and blitz the entire game. They can't go zero blitz the whole game. McDuffie's going to be able to do it, but the rest of them are not there. Like, they're just not developed enough. Now, you have Kelvin Joseph on the roster who has the speed to do it, but he's not developed. He's a high 60 overall. So it's just like, I mean, you have a lot of questions with how is he going to run this defense, because it's not constructed to do what he likes to do, which is be very aggressive. Is he going to sit back and just cover? Is he going to be aggressive anyways and get burned because of it? I don't know. Like, that's why the fit is 4 out of 5. But he still has the dynasty moniker. And, I mean, all the reasons that we said before with the offense and all the pluses of the defense kind of speak for itself. I mean, the roster is the biggest reason why. And then, obviously, he is an 8 out of 10 user. It's not like he's a slouch or anything. He won a Super Bowl last year, but he's never won multiple, right? But this year could be the year that he does it with the Chiefs. Like, it's serious. Like, he could. And like we said, we talked about the alphas for divisions. And speaking of, right, another division where it kind of worked out, where it's like, on paper, there is a clear alpha. There's nobody that's right there with him. There's nobody within the top 10, really. He has the Broncos, who is YP, I believe. That's AB's protege. You have Frizzy on the Raiders. These are 2 new guys. Now, they could come in and challenge him, but I don't see them challenging him right away, right? Not with the Chiefs. So they're going to have a way to go. I think he's going to, at the very least, have a huge head start on these guys. And then, of course, you have GKRC, of course, with the Chargers. So that's not anything to look down upon either. I believe it's GKRC. I'm sorry if I misspoke. If it's not, we'll double check when we see the full rankings in a second here after these final 3 teams. But ultimately, yeah, that's why he's a dynasty, and we'll get into the final 3 now. And here I am, the New York Football Jets. I did technically put myself in the dynasty tier, but I mean, I'm not going to like sit here and say, you know, what I want to do with the team from a schematic standpoint, like in terms of like measuring myself skill wise, I guess is what I'll say. But I will delve into the roster a little bit of the Jets and what I want to do with them. Like, at the same time, I'm not going to, like, I'm not measuring myself, although I did put myself technically in the dynasty tier, but I'm not going to say that's where I am because I'm ranking myself, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So my quarterback, obviously, I have Aaron Rodgers. I'm hoping to get 2 years out of him, but I'm expecting to get 1 year out of him. You know, I really think, I mean, he's going to elevate my offense the way I want to run it for the first year. Beyond that, we're going to figure it. I love having the opportunity to kind of go look for my quarterback and the option of drafting one, of trading for one, free agency. That's an exciting thing for me. And with this Jets team, I think there's so many different ways I could go. That's a fun thing for me. So like I said, I hope to get 2 years out of Aaron Rodgers, but I wouldn't be upset if I only get 1. We're going to be going for that Super Bowl for the first year, of course, with him to try to go out on top. This running back room is really fun for me. Breece Hall is obviously the guy there, but you obviously have a 21-year-old Israel Apikanda, and you have Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. So it's like you have four guys in the running back room that are 23 years old or younger. You have guys ranging from 20 years old to 23 years old. They all have different skill sets and pluses too, like plus attributes. So where I want to go with that, I don't know yet, but it should be fun to figure out and sift through, that running back room and figure out what I want to do. From a receiver standpoint, my guy Garrett Wilson is going to be my receiver ideally for the entirety of the franchise. I want him to make big plays for me. I want him to move the chains for me. I want him to hopefully become one of, if not the best receiver in the league. Dominate people, hopefully, is what I want to do with Garrett Wilson. Mike Williams is kind of the big guy, the red zone threat, the guy who's going to go make jump ball catches. He's kind of I don't want to call him a Band-Aid because he's going to last a little bit longer than like a Band-Aid, quote unquote. But, I mean, he's just kind of a temporary piece there. He's not going to be a guy that I carry through all the way. We'll see when I move on from him, but, he's a good player for right now. Beyond that, Malachi Corley, my slot receiver, Xavier Gibson, Tyler Harrell. I don't know if any or all of these guys will even make the team, so it's hard to say definitively what I'm going to do with them yet, but they're all guys worth mentioning and saying that I would have a role for all of them if they do make the team. At tight end, there's not really anyone super worth of note. Tyler Conklin probably gets the job by default because there's no one else to really challenge him, but, you can make one trade, so, if anyone's trading a tight end, let me know, I guess. Moving on to the offensive line, you have Tyron Smith, who's at the tail end of his prime. I'll gladly take whatever years he can give me before he retires. And then to replace him, I have Ulumuyiwu Fashionu. I butchered that name in all likelihood, but he is a superstar tackle that I am going to fully utilize and deploy and be glad to have, as I rarely have a superstar offensive lineman to start. I love building superstar offensive linemen, as you guys probably know. That's kind of something I really prioritize, is getting an excellent line out there, because when you get an excellent line out there, you can really tell it elevates your team. It gives you that extra second or two to throw. It gives you a little bit wider run lanes. It moves people off the ball a little bit more. And those subtle differences make a big difference altogether. And that's really important to me. Other than that, Joe Tippmann, Elijah Vera Tucker, and Morgan Moses are all good. So this is a good offensive line. It's not great. It's still got a lot of room to grow because there's some young players, there's some old players. I have a lot of what I want to do with it, but, they're going to be good for year one. And that's kind of what we're evaluating the roster off of, right? This defense, from an edge standpoint, if Hassan Reddick remains with the Jets and doesn't get traded in real life before week one, I'm happy to have Hassan Reddick as my number one pass rusher. I'm happy to have Jermaine Johnson as my number two. But I really, I don't have much of a rotation beyond those guys. Will McDonald's fine, but, as my third guy and having no one else other than him, I guess he's going to be forced to take some snaps, and I really prefer not to have to do that. But, whatever works, I suppose. And then, obviously, Quinnen Williams is the crown jewel of the defensive line here. Hopefully he disrupts and blows up a ton of plays and makes a ton of plays for me in the inside of that defense. And then we still have C.J. Mosley at linebacker. We have Quincy Williams. So two veteran linebackers. Nobody that's like a young stud, but guys that are going to do their jobs until I figure out long-term solutions there. Corner, you have the most valuable player on the team, Sauce Gardner. One of the biggest reasons why I took them, if not the biggest reason I took them, is to have Sauce Gardner for the entire franchise, have him make excellent plays for me, have him lock down number one receivers. He does what he does, Other than that, you have DJ Reed Jr., you have a bunch of guys. Yeah, I'm going to have to figure out what I want to do with this defense, how I want to deploy these guys, who starts. I'm not 100% sure, but we're going to see. And at safety, you just kind of have some veteran guys. Nobody worth, really harping on and spending some time on. So, yeah, I'm excited to compete with the Jets. It should be really fun. The AFC East is going to be pretty competitive because, me and Smoke both in the top 6. That's going to be definitely a rivalry, I think, throughout the entire Madden. Fun for people to watch. And I really don't think Mitch is going to sit back and do nothing with Josh Allen. I think he's going to be a threat to definitely be wary of. And then the new user coming in, SLWJR with the Patriots, who knows what he could do? He could be really good. You never really know. So that division could be very interesting. We're going to see what the AFC's. Unlike a lot of other divisions with me and Smoke there is no clear on paper alpha. It's kind of a 2-horse race on paper, but I really don't think Mitch is going to sit back and not compete with a quarterback that fits his strengths perfectly. So getting into the number 2 team, there are only 2 teams left. They're both in the NFC. All the AFC teams are gone now. So the top 2 are in the NFC, and this is the Minnesota Vikings. It is Beige. And he's the only user I rated as a 10 out of 10, including AB at number 1, because Beige has a proven track record, right? He's the only user to win multiple Super Bowls every Madden since Madden 21. So that's Madden 21, that's Madden 22, that's Madden 23, and that's Madden 24. He's won in 4 Madden straight. He's won 2 or more Super Bowls. I think that speaks for itself. That pretty much guarantees him at the dynasty level threat, regardless of what team he has. He's done it with 4 different teams. He's done it 4 different ways. So it's just he gets the benefit of the doubt all the way up at 10 out of 10 with a user. And I really think this fit's good. I know a lot of people are probably questioning this, scratching their head, saying why the Vikings. The fit makes sense. You have the youngest rookie quarterback with star development who can move with a decent arm, 85 speed, 91 throw power, star development, 21 years old. You have the single best receiver for Madden franchise because of the age and the abilities and everything like that, Justin Jefferson. You have an excellent young number 2, Jordan Addison. You have an elite Madden tight end, TJ Hawkinson, who's going to create separation and be a headache. It's going to be really hard to stop this Vikings team. It's going to be hard to get off the field with them. I think the fit offensively is going to be really good. I think all those players I mentioned are going to be core franchise pieces for Beige through the duration of SOB virtually. I think the offensive line, even with Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill with some role players, is going to be pretty good. I think that's going to be sneak good. Now, where the team fit kind of falls off a little bit is the defense, right? You have to build a defense. It's going to have to be completely developed. Beige is going to have to win a lot of shootouts early on in the franchise, and he will. He's going to win a lot of shootouts, but he's just going to have to play that way, right? Now, the guys you do want to mention on defense, Dallas Turner, obviously a young stud. He can play edge. He can play off ball. Whatever he wants him to kind of do, he can do that. Other than that, a lot of question marks on this defense. Harrison Smith's old, but he's still going to be able to make some, smart veteran plays, I guess, back there. But that's where the question marks come in. I think the fit is so good on offense, and there are enough, the Dallas Turner, the Andrew Van Ginkels of the world. There's enough pieces on defense where this was a 4, but the offensive fit is so excellent and so smart from a cost-effective standpoint, because J.J. McCarthy's probably going to be high overall by the end of the first year under rookie contract. That it's a really excellent fit. Now the roster is only ranked as a 3 out of 5. Obviously because of the defensive deficiencies, but still very good. So all in all, Beige kind of rounds out the NFC North and makes it one of the most formidable divisions in the league, probably. But he is the clear alpha, so it's again another division where we'll touch on all the divisions after we cover number 1, and we'll really paint the picture of how that looks on paper. So rounding out the draft with the only team remaining, and a well-deserved number 1 spot for AB, who, again, someone who gets the Dynasty moniker. Now, he did only get a user 9 out of 10 instead of 10 out of 10, because he really only had 1 year of success. So it's you kind of have to have multiple years of substantive Super Bowl success before I'm ready to put you as a 10 out of 10 user. But he's right there, 9. He's the only user who's ranked a 9. Everyone is either an 8 or Beige was a 10. So it's not like he's low or anything. He just isn't on the same. He doesn't get the same benefit of the doubt as Beige, which I think is fair. AB's done an excellent job for 1 Madden. Beige has done it for 4 straight Maddens and for 6 total. So it's you just get a lot more benefit of the doubt than that. This Eagles roster is absurd. It could be made a case that they're a 5 out of 5. I was teetering between 4 and a 5. They'd be a 4.5 out of 5 if I did halves. But there are some question marks. The main one, although he is a really good player, is Jalen Hurts. Like, is the throw power going to be enough for AB to run his whole offense and have the whole field have every throw available to him? Is he going to have every single throw that he needs available to him with that throw power? It's yet to be seen. We're going to see. He has great abilities. He's got the gunslinger, so he's got the gunslinger ability. So it's possible, but I don't know. We're going to see. That's a question mark, though. And that's a big part of why it's only a 4 and not a 5. But other than that, I mean, Barkley, he's going to be a stud with Barkley. He's going to make excellent plays with Barkley, undoubtedly. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and whoever else he wants to put as a third receiver, whether it be Paris Campbell or someone else, that's an excellent receiving core for the way he likes to play. And they have different skill sets, so he can kind of deploy them all in different ways that he sees fit. He has Dallas Goedert at tight end. He's got an excellent offensive line. Lane Johnson's kind of at the tail end of his career, but you have Jordan Mailata. You have Landon Dickerson. You have, I believe, a young offensive lineman. I don't know if they're going to be a starter, but I know you have somebody there. On the defensive side of the ball, you have Jordan Davis. You have Jalen Carter. You have Devin White at linebacker. You have Nakobe Dean at linebacker. Like, you have plenty of pieces, plenty of guys that are going to make big plays, plenty of pass rush depth. You have Nolan Smith, of course, who Charles turned into an excellent off-ball linebacker last year. It's going to be interesting to see if he either wants to go the off-ball route with Nolan Smith or wants to go pass rush or kind of wants to go middle ground. We'll see. At corner, it's probably the deepest corner room in the league because you have, like, veterans like Bradbury and Darius Slay. And then you also have young guys like Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, and Kelly Ringo. So, like, this corner room's deep as hell. And, like, good luck. The corner room is probably the biggest reason why it's a perfect fit because it's such a good fit and such good depth from a corner perspective that, like, you know, AB is going to be able to do – he runs a lot of creative defensive schemes. He does a lot of really interesting things on the defensive side of the ball. He'll put, like, his corner into a quarter on, like, a man coverage play so that way he doesn't get beat over top and won't have a safety there. For example, and it, you know, running with these type of corners and that having that type of creativity, I'm interested to see how he's going to use these guys. It's going to be fun to watch and exciting, I think. And then of course they got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back again, and you also have Sidney Brown. So just an embarrassment of riches on this roster. It really could be made that it's a 5. Like, I wouldn't be mad if someone said it was a 5. I wouldn't argue with that. I just personally had it at 4, but he is a dynasty level threat as he was last year, and proved me wrong because I only had him a contender. I know that was at least one ranking that I did have wrong, admittedly, last year, but he well deserved this number 1 spot. And now we're going to cover, like, we're going to give a recap of, like, the entire draft and everything like that. So this is kind of what it looks like. I'll send that list to the chat. And yeah, that's kind of what the overall overview looks like. We'll go to by conference. That's like the blue are obviously NFC, the red are AFC. So that's fairly evenly distributed. I don't think it's as bad as last year in terms of disparity, if there is a disparity. So, I don't know. That's an interesting conversation. What do you guys think is better, AFC or NFC, based on that? I don't know. That's a good conversation to have off the bat. And then we're going to go to really division because this is really where a discussion can be had, more of like breaking down the divisions. I think it's more interesting. I think AFC versus NFC is going to be a constant war throughout the entire year, and division isn't talked about as much, so we'll touch on divisions ourselves here. We'll start over in the NFC with the NFC North. I think Beige is kind of the clear alpha of the NFC North. He's the king in the North, so to speak. And then, Hat kind of the clear secondary guy. And then you're going to have Novocaine and Jacek battling for that third spot. Now, anyone can take that second spot. I think Beige is going to be the clear number 1 over there. I really don't see anyone overtaking him. Jumping to the NFC East, AB's the clear alpha. So It's kind of interesting how the entire NFC pretty much has like that one guy that's that clear guy that's going to run the division probably, and then everyone else is vying for that second spot. But I mean, Mike, if anyone can challenge their number one guy in their division, I think Mike could challenge AB, but he's going to need to build that team up first. AB's going to run that division probably until Mike builds up the Commanders. So probably for at least the first few seasons. I don't foresee him challenging him before that, really, realistically. Rick's with the Giants and Raw with the Cowboys, I think. I think Rick's will be a clear bit better than Raw with the Cowboys. I just don't see Raw really tapping into the Cowboys' ability that much. With the NFC West, I think Scruggs is kind of the clear guy there. And then the NFC South, Casey's kind of the clear guy there. And like we said, all those guys are kind of battling for number 2 on paper. Now, anyone can surprise me, of course, so that's not set in stone. Like, you can change the narrative, change the story, win games, flip the script on me. But that's what it looks like, right? And then the AFC, it's a little different, right? There's not as many just clear defined alphas. There, for half of the conference there is, but for the AFC North and the AFC East, it's going to be competitive. I think, both of those divisions at least are 2-horse races. Could even be made a case to be 3, maybe 4-horse races. So those should be really competitive, interesting divisions with some good storylines. I think me and Smoke, that probably on paper is the best rivalry in the league from a division standpoint. I am a little biased, but that'll be fun probably for other people to watch twice a year. I know it's going to be tough for me to play Smoke twice a year. I haven't done that since Madden 20, so that's going to be a headache for me. I really would rather not do that, but it is what it is. The AFC West and the AFC South both kind of have their own clearly defined number ones as well, with Trells as the Texans and TJ as the Chiefs. And then we kind of have a lot of newer users spread out through mostly the AFC. So that's kind of how we're looking there. I mean, this looks very interesting. This looks very spread out. This is maybe the most spread out the top users have been in a long time in SOB. I don't know. You tell me. What do you think? Which division is worse? Which division is best? Rank the divisions on paper. I'm curious to see what everyone's opinion is. But yeah, I mean, that's the rankings. We're going to go back to the team draft overall, so we can kind of close on that. And this was the team draft. Thank you to everyone who submitted your list. I'm really looking forward to a competitive year in SOB 25, and good luck to everyone.